I'll call the February 6, 2024 regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would Councilmember Paddock please lead us?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adrian, roll call please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vignal,
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari,
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Allison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque,
Here.
and Councilmember Paddock.
Present.
Okay, audience communication. Would anyone like to address the council at the outset of the meeting? Not seeing anyone in the chambers. Anyone online? Not seeing anyone online, so we'll move right along to presentations. Irmina, are you going to introduce our guests?
Will do, Mayor. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and to our audience joining us virtually and those in the chamber. Tonight, our colleagues from the state Auditor's Office is here to do the entrance conference, and they will be going over the scope of the audit, which covers the accountability for years 2021 to 2022, as well as the financial audit for 2022. Here joining us is Christina Baylor, the program manager, and also Chad Taylor Edgington, the assistant state auditors who is lead for this engagement. I turn it over to you.
Good evening. Okay, good. It works. That's always a good start. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Baylor, and it's a pleasure to be with you this evening to share what we call our entrance conference for the city of Mill Creek. As Irmina mentioned, I serve as a program manager, and I am based very locally to the city. We are right up the street. We've had the pleasure of working with the city for many, many years, and so it's always a pleasure to see some, familiar faces as well as some new faces as we visit you to conduct your audit. We will be walking through a little bit about what we have planned for our current engagement, which is underway, and a little bit about some resources that have come out since your last audit. To help facilitate this discussion, we did share a packet of information that I believe is already in the council packets, and I think we're going to be displaying it up on the screen so that everybody can see that. For members joining us here in person, we do have a few extra copies on the table here. All righty. So this packet of information does contain several documents, but really the first couple pages are the agenda of what we'll be discussing today. I mentioned the purpose of tonight's presentation is what we call an entrance conference. It's really a chance to share with you the types and scope of the audit work that we have set forth to perform, as well as a little bit about the areas that we plan to conduct a further review of. You'll see up on the screen in front of you, our audit scope includes, two separate audit engagements. The first audit will be an accountability for public resources, spanning the period that you see up on the screen there, and it will cover the city's compliance with state laws, regulations, contracts, agreements, and your own safeguarding of public resources. It can really cover a lot of areas, but as you can imagine, we can't look at all of the activities that the city engages in during the period. So we do have to select specific areas for further testing. My colleague Chad is going to be joining you just shortly to share a little bit about the areas that he has selected. Chad?
Thank you. Please, this mic can reach me. Well, thank you. So we use a risk-based approach to look at the different areas in the accountability audit we're going to look at. The first area we'll look at is payroll. Payroll is a major expenditure system for most entities. Payroll we haven't looked at since 2019 for the city of Mill Creek. And there are many different ways that payroll can be looked at across all departments. One area that we focus in many entities is police. There's not fire department here has been annexed, so we'll look at the police department for timekeeping, for wages, for overtime, for shift trades, and then through planning, through our field work, we will look from there and look if we want to look deeper into different departments in different areas for the city to make sure that the wages and the overtime and all that is accounted for and complies with all the policies and areas of the city. We will also be looking at compliance with the CRF, or the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant. There in 2020, there was a management letter issued over the cost allowances that all recipients of the grant were in compliance. So, and there was some recommendations. So we're just going to review those recommendations just to make sure that moving forward, that the city is in compliance with all those requirements as well. And that there's no issues on that moving forward. We will look at financial condition for the city. So we're just gonna look at the financial condition of the city, that moving forward, the city is in good condition for no signs of financial distress. And then we look at open public meetings. We look at compliance as we are here today for meetings, minutes, and executive session requirements of the city. For the financial statement audit that is conducted for the 2022 fiscal year, so January 21st through December 31st, 2022. The main purpose of that is to find an opinion that the financial statements were reported fairly and that they can be relied on. We will come forward with that with financial statement opinion, and we'll look at the internal controls that they can be relied on. And if we find anything with the internal controls on the financial statements, we will bring that forward to you in the audit report when we bring that forward. Moving forward with the other resources and the other things that we have, there's an engagement letter. We provide an engagement letter at the beginning of the audit that provides you with the responsibilities, the other limitations. It also has the cost to audit, the estimated timeline, and the completion and expected communications. In the packet, we also wanted to communicate to you the different levels of reporting. There are 3 main levels of reporting in the audit as we're going through and looking at these different areas in the audit. The first level is findings. Findings would formally address issues in the audit report. They're the most significant results in the audit, such as significant deficiencies and any material weaknesses that you will find. The city will have an opportunity to formally respond to those, and they will have to do with non-compliance with laws, regulations, and policies. The next thing would be management letters. So management letters would be a step down from a finding, and those would communicate control deficiencies, non-compliance, misappropriation, or abuse that is less significant than the finding. Those would be referenced but not detailed in the audit report. And then finally, we would have exit items. So exit items would address control deficiencies, non-compliance, or regulations that are less significant than a management letter, and these would be informally communicated to management. And then as far as confidential information, we are committed to protecting your information. We have SAO share where management is able to upload sensitive information so that your information is protected. The audit costs are provided there in your packet as well. And through the course of the audit, we're able to communicate with management. We have weekly status meetings with Laurel Brock and Irmina Lumbad on the audit, and any significant changes are communicated. So please let us know with any concerns that you have throughout the course of the audit, and we should be able to communicate that with you. And now I will hand this over to Christina for the next part.
All right, thank you, Chad. If we could move to page 2 of the document, that is great. Thank you so much. Okay, before we move on to just sharing some additional resources that we'd like to bring your attention to this evening, I'd like to pause and see if there's any questions on the specific areas that have been selected for the accountability audit or any of the information that we have shared thus far.
Not seeing any. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Well, as part of our entrance conference, we would like to take a quick moment to share a few additional reminders to the city, as well as some resources. The first reminder is that we do like to remind our governments that should the city become aware of a known or suspected loss of public funds, there is a loss reporting requirement under Washington state law. That requirement requires that you submit to our office timely, it used to say immediately, but timely any known or suspected losses of public funds. It's a very easy process to do. You can do that right on our website. And the city has always done a very good job at doing that, but that is just a reminder so that you are aware of that requirement. In addition to that, a new side step from that is cybersecurity losses. Many of our governments are encountering cybersecurity losses that can take many forms. They can be viruses that can interrupt your software or, put malware or other things on your city computer systems, but they can also be attempts to falsify payments or try to get government money out to the wrong hands. We've seen a lot of different versions of this. So as another reminder, we'd like to make sure the city is aware that there are 2 reporting requirements for cybersecurity losses as well. On a large scale, if the city were to experience a cybersecurity loss that affects more than 500 Washington state residents, you are required to notify the Attorney General's office. That process can be found on their website, but again, that's more of a large scale process. But on a smaller scale, or really no scale at all, the State Auditor's Office also asks our governments to notify us if you have any cybersecurity losses that occur out there. And you might be surprised, there's a lot of them. So if you think you've experienced anything of that nature, we do encourage you to go ahead and submit that the same way you would do with a normal loss. And we will move to page 3 of the document on the website. So on page 3 of your packet, we do have a few more items to share with you. And those include, we'll start with our discussion of peer reviews. We often get the question during our audit process if the city is required to undergo a state audit. Does the State Auditor's Office also have to undergo an audit? The answer is yes, yes, we do. We do participate in a peer review program, and that occurs once every 3 years. We're very pleased to share with you that our most recent audit occurred last fall, and we did receive a pass rating, which is the highest level of assurance that you can have. And our last item that we wanted to share with you tonight are those resources that have come out. So there are 2 resources included in your packet, and we won't go through them today, but they are included. They are, the first is our Audit Connection newsletter. This is a newsletter that we put out twice per year. It's a good way to sign up and stay alert to any additional information or new items that are coming out that we want our governments to be aware of. We've included the most recent connection from September of last year. We do encourage you to take a look at that, as it's a good way to stay up to date on new emerging areas, and you can sign up to receive that correspondence on our website. Lastly is a new resource in the fraud division of our office. Our office does investigate, as I mentioned, losses of public funds, and we are putting forth a new effort to produce resources that you can utilize to help your government improve and protect its ability to safeguard from public losses. Our first resource is included in your packet. It is called our Trust But Verify document. That is specifically made for elected officials. That document will walk you through what you can do as elected officials to protect, detect, and prevent fraud from occurring at your city government. We encourage you to take a look at that when you have time, and that is the first of many resources that we will be putting out on our website to help government safeguard from fraud. And with that, that concludes the presentation that we have for you this evening. Chad will be leading the team that is conducting this engagement for the coming weeks. Should you have any questions at all, we encourage you to reach out. But again, we look forward to sharing the results of our audit once that's complete, and we'll be back to present those to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Any questions? As always, we look forward to working with you, and we look forward to being done.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, council is going to recess now to executive session to discuss the status of collective bargaining negotiations. I'm told we're going to need about 20 minutes, and action will be taken at the conclusion of the executive session. So that will be in recess until 6:35 p.m.
Yeah, I tripped on the thing already.
So, planning commission members, you can hang out long as long as you can. Yeah. If you're call for it, you'll make a quorum, I don't think it matters, it's not a real official business. It's a working session, yeah, I think, you think everybody's coming? From Brian, yeah. So I was thinking, so when we get sort, they're gonna come back with an executive session, they got 2 weeks of business. Then when they say, please come down to the table, you guys could have been moving it up, not moving it. I mean, you guys can come down, you can hang out here watching, we've got some guests coming. That almost sounded like a Leslie Neal. You're gonna sit down. You're gonna call the roll. Yeah, we've already learned. He's gonna call the roll. Absolutely. Yeah, then I'm gonna give kind of kick off, I'll give kind of some round rules, overview, and manage. So we have the presentation. That might make a difference. Yes, so maybe she's gonna give some presentations about that. Yeah. So I think I'm here with the man who's sitting there. Okay. For time. Okay. I'm gonna stand up on the side. Okay. You guys are still places here. Then we can go up. And then they're gonna get the recommendation that you're talking about, Mayor 1, 2, 3. That's kind of what we're in discussion. Kind of take it back on that. And the mayor kind of on that discussion. So that role's gonna be here. And everybody just speaks up that way. That kind of makes sense. Yeah, so we're gonna come down the, oh, they're gonna be, those spots, they're gonna come down here after this. So that gives us some idea. The lights are on. And then you're. Cool. Alright. Yeah. That kind of makes sense. Yeah. So, and then your slide's gonna be elements. Yes. We can stand up like you said. Stand up when you're going down. Yeah. You can sit down there. Is there a mic presenting? Yes. The usual thing, like that small one? Yeah. We're gonna do a mic. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, and this, I see that this also that much. We used that one last time. So that's what we're gonna pass on. Yeah, okay. Could you give us last instruction on this? So you want to. So the presenter. That's what is project. You present from here, we talk about that. No, okay, that's gonna take. Okay. The whole room. Okay. And you can stand in here, you don't stand here. So what? All right, well, oh, right, that's what I was thinking. But it isn't been like a. I don't know if there's something. I think you could stand probably. Stand here and click. Well, it's nice that we'll see the slides. Yeah. Well, the slides won't show. But I thought, yeah, they showed here. They showed here. I mean, they did last time. Are you guys going to share on the advanced slides? I have advanced with the keyboard like that last. Yeah, I got some clicker. No. Keyboard works fine. So what I'll do is just. Yeah. Last time, so this shared a screen. If it doesn't work, then. Okay. Okay. When I stand, so they're gonna open their language. When I stand and start talking, you could put the slides. I don't need that slide, but we can just get them all queued up.
So then Mandy,
And then we'll.
who's ready to go, then she'll step up here.
Yep, we get control in the room.
Perfect.
Great, awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, cool.
Nice to meet you.
Well, thanks for coming out. On standby, my name. At some point. I just remembered I have to go get out. Let me go get those and then. Okay. Yeah, and he does take them to work. I think he has actually show the residents in the morning. And I think it's. Yeah. And he doesn't park along on the residents on part. In another location as well that is not on the. Right. No, they don't, they just.
Oh, they
meet
meet.
here,
Okay.
they meet. Right. Okay. And sometimes I know this is a problem from the settle that we do this for. Other than, they say that it's in this. always feel like when they go on screen, it's the first time they've ever seen it. I always forget like, no, they was on board. Or maybe. But, right, but this time it's. So I noted, they were just putting it in there. But sometimes when you. Yeah, but. They did it. Just not attached to. Reports. So then. Who are you? Who are you? Oh, that's terrible. So. I am getting lost. So we have over where. We are the city. Yeah, that's your call. Yes, we are. That's gonna be a problem. So. Are you driving around? They see you wave at you. You're coming out of the right here. Yeah. I got something for you. That's why I like to remember them. No, this one. That is process they have to do it. I don't know. But Help you? Very fun specialist. Okay.
We had not officially decided that we're okay for that. We need to go. You were out there. Okay, okay, I swear it feels like the air conditioner comes on in here at night.
It does.
It freezes us to death here. And we're frozen. And not like the movie.
Can someone go make sure that computer's logged out in there? Breakout room is still showing in there. Okay, the council concluded its executive session at 6:32 PM. We'll now move on to our new business, and the first item is the Park and Recreation Board appointments. Mayor Pro Tem?
Mayor, I'm gonna have Councilmember Duque do this.
Councilmember Duque?
Well, it was Councilmember Paddock, Mayor Pro Tem Vignal and I, and Parks and Recreation Chair Tanis Golubevsky had interviews, 3 amazing candidates. You may recall that there were 2 open positions for Parks and Recreation Board, and we had a great time hearing all of the different perspectives and backgrounds about where they come from and their, how long they've been in Mill Creek. And it was really great to be able to take that time to, it's so brief and short, but I felt like we all really appreciated everyone's time. So thank you for that. So I wanted to move forward with a motion, and then if there's any questions you guys have on the appointees, let me know. I'd like to move to appoint Shai Benaderet and Chris Holmer to the vacant positions on the Park and Recreation Board for 3-year terms ending October 31st, 2026.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Just, if I may, I just wanted
Hey,
to share that we really took a look at their perspectives on parks and recreation, how they use parks and our recreation programs, and really thinking through what maybe was missing on the existing board, or what are things that could, bring that level of diversity in terms of what they're thinking about. And so I really feel confident moving forward with these 2 individuals, and encourage the third to apply for another open position.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to second what Councilmember Duque said. We had 3 excellent candidates, and it was really hard to make a decision, and came down to picking who we thought would be the best fit with what needs are available, what openings are needed on the Parks Board right now. And we highly recommended that the third candidate make sure that they apply for the Arts and Beautification Board, because there are openings there too. And so we think that they're a great candidate. And so hopefully they will do that. And it was just a hard choice. So it's nice to have difficult choices like this. Thank you to everyone.
Any other discussion? See none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Welcome to our 2 new Park Board members. Brings us to item B, the AFSCME contract, Deputy City Manager.
So we have the 2024 through 2027 CBA that is needing council authorization for the city manager to sign. And we had a good negotiation.
Anyone have any questions? Contract was in the packet.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2022 to 24 collective bargaining agreement between the city of Mill Creek. Nah, disregard. I had the wrong one up here.
Do we have the proper resolution or motion that we need to make?
Mayor, if I can correct myself here, motion to approve the 2024 to 2027 collective bargaining agreement CBA between the city of Mill Creek and the Washington State Council of County and City Employees, AFSCME, AFL-CIO.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Good job, everybody, on really quick deliberations and just drilling down to the meat of everything, getting it handled.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Item 6C, which is the guild contract, the legal snafu has come up that our crack legal team needs to resolve before we bring this back for council approval. So we'll be putting this on the agenda of an upcoming meeting, hopefully sooner rather than later. So we will not be dealing with that issue tonight. Which brings us to our study session. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to go down to the tables with the planning commission. So take your, oh, they've already moved them down there for us. I was told that we were going to need to take them with us. So your seats have been assigned at the table below. So we'll go down there and the planning commission, I believe, will call their meeting to order and then we'll begin our joint session. I think did I get that right? Okay, so go down below.
Testing.
Sounds good.
Hello? Thanks. I have Matthew right here. How are you? I'm good. Benjamin, you're over here next to Alan. I think I see Benjamin. Hi, how are you? I'm good. I didn't even recognize you. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Hi, I'm a little shorter. Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm also I know, right? I actually watched the planning commission after. I've been kind of a little bit slow, so maybe a little bit shorter. Yeah, like she had it here, it looks like what she used. Are you? We're looking up here. Do you get the yellow? We will call our planning commission. Getting to order. I thought of you when I was like complaining at my husband, come get out. Are we ready? Mike, are you ready? Okay. Okay. We had that. Okay, so. The power. Thank you to the council. I need to officially call our planning commission of February 2022.
And so we will start with a roll call, and then we will do a quick introduction of the planning commission members, and then we will turn it over for our study session. So I will start through. So Vice Chair Hamilton. Here. Commissioner Abrams. Here. Commissioner Briles. See him on screen.
Pictures there.
Thank you. Here.
Here.
Mr. Borger. There we go. Commissioner Geiger. Here. Mr. Gable.
Here.
And Commissioner Chair Nolan here. Okay, and so we'll work counterclockwise and go with a commission member introduction to council. Or so.
How long have you been on council? How long have you been on the planning commission?
I've been there a little bit less than a year. And what else do you want me to say? I'm a retired attorney, thank God. I find it very interesting what we're doing. We've got a lot of opinions on the comprehensive plan that we'll go over at some point. And, grandkids, little ones. Really, that's all? Oh.
One's playing basketball right
now. That's about me. That's it.
Hi there. So, Commissioner Barunda, I've been a Mill Creek resident since 2012. I've been a member of the Planning Commission since, I believe, January 2021.
So I'm Dave Ambleton. I've been on the commission for, I think it's between 4 and 6 years now. I didn't know that was going to be a test question. I've lived in this general area for 40 years, so I remember when Murphy's Corner was a feed store. That's what it's named after.
We'll introduce our consultants in a minute. Go ahead.
Matt Geiger. I've been in Mill Creek for 4 years. Summertime, I work with Yamamoto doing public works.
I'm Petra Gable. I've been on the commission almost 3 years. Since I joined the legislative animal. Semi-retired.
Okay. Benjamin, hear
you? Yes, I am. Sorry, there was an issue with muting. I've been on the planning commission for a bit over a year, and I'm an engineer by trade, and have been in the area. I've lived in Mill Creek since 2012.
Thank you. And I'm Matt Nolan, and I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the planning commission. I've been on the commission for more than a decade and in Mill Creek for 25 years now plus. And so it's my second time through on comp planning here, and it's a lot of fun. And we're looking forward to hearing from the council, getting some direction so we can do the important work that you have selected us to help support you. So thank you so much. I'll turn it over to staff. Mike.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. So a couple ground rules. You've got to speak loud enough that somebody in the back corner can hear you, because that microphone is picking up everything. So for the benefit of the recording and our audience, Mayor Holtzclaw has got to project his voice to appear in the conference room. Okay, that's the challenge for tonight. So remember to speak up, because that's the way we're working the microphone tonight. Presenters are going to be mostly from here. We've got a presentation going on. I'd like to introduce kind of our consultant team is Mandy Roberts from OTAC. And then part of that consultant team includes Leland Consulting, so Andrew Oliver. They're going to be carrying a lot of the presentation. We apologize, there's a presentation to get started, but we're headed towards the discussion. Two other people in the room that you need to know about is Mark Betcher in the back, is kind of a guest for us. He's not kind of a guest, he is a guest for us. He'll explain briefly what he is, but he's going to give us kind of a real world view of what it's like to do development and talk about some projects they've done as part of this. And then welcome back Clay White. Clay is back on contract in my group because El Tarico left. And so Clay got started with a lot of middle housing stuff, got a lot started with the sub-area plan stuff, been a Mill Creek resident for a long time, got a long background. So I tapped him to come and help me as a consultant with our comp plan process. Sybil is somewhere. Sybil is there. Sybil in the back is our senior planner, is kind of helping the main planner on this, and Justin. Mostly, we're going to be having you guys do the discussion, but I want to identify those folks if we get to call on. That's that. So thank you for being here tonight. Remember when we met, I think it was in
November or so, we said, let's make sure we keep these two groups connected, because we didn't want to get the planning commission ahead of the council, because ultimately the council needs to sign off on the comp plan at the end. And if we weren't staying lockstep, we're gonna run into trouble. You guys just did a bunch of great retreats, but we've been patiently waiting to say, let's have this session and move on. The timing is kind of fortuitous. Planning commission's been working on the land use and housing elements. Those are typically the big ones that kind of drive everything. That's why I put the land use and zoning maps up on the wall to kind of remind us what we're about. They need some direction tonight. That's what they're gonna be looking for, have a discussion, some direction of where we go. As they've got, just as Sybil pointed out a moment ago, they got 8 more meetings, 8 more months to get this done, because it has to be adopted by the end of the year. Going into this, Mayor Holtzclaw reminded me of a good thing. We have a tendency to focus on the housing targets, and we focus on what we got to do today. But he encouraged me to step back, and so that's why that huge pile of stuff is in your packet. I know you didn't read it. But the point was to say, let's think a little bit about our history. Our history as a community, we're kind of nice. It's a 40-year-old community, 50-year-old community. And we were blessed with UDC, did a good job of planning a wonderful community in the first place. And for the 70s and the 80s, it worked. And some of the stuff got built in the 80s because it was the minimum amount of commercial that was required to make that residential community work. Well, early 90s, a bunch of us were on ground said, I wish I had better than a Mexican restaurant to go to occasionally and one grocery store. And if I need to buy a pair of underwear, I don't want to go clear to the mall and stuff like that. And entertainment and restaurants and other things, other shops. And so the idea started generating for the town center. If you look back at the history, and we'll talk about a little bit of that tonight, it was in the 90s, they were doing visioning, and Mandy's going to show you some of that visioning. It's kind of deja vu. It's kind of the same thing 20 years later. It took about 10 years for that to happen. The first mining site plans were 2003, 2004, and town center came out of that. I was thinking back to living before that time. We all loved all the trees on this side of the highway. You look at the old maps, it's all trees, and the community hated the idea of building anything down here. Yeah, we wanted new restaurants, we wanted a place to shop, but don't take down those trees. Well, guess what? Would anybody today say, I wish you put those trees back up and take away town center? I don't think so. So just in 20 years, think about how beloved that center has become for us and what a difference it's made. So one of the things we did when we first started to talk about the Mill Creek Sub-Area Plan a couple of years ago before COVID, remember we were talking about improving the gateway to Mill Creek. It was all about, in the first place, how do we make it so when you come down 164th, you don't turn around and see the back of a good-looking Safeway, but it's still the back of a Safeway. And you had to kind of snake through past City Hall and some industrial buildings, tilt up concrete to get to town center. So we talked about extending down to the gateway. We talked about doing a better job of water quality. None of these properties probably could have redeveloped, still can't redevelop, because they're within a stream buffer. So we talked about working with the Department of Ecology and doing some water quality improvements to say, how could we make it possible for an owner when they wanted to redevelop or sell to a developer, how could we see new development? Because this is the oldest tilt-up construction in the city, and this building is hanging in there, but it's getting old. And we also talked about the placemaking that happened in town center. Think about how much fun it is to go and just walk around. People just walk around, love that placemaking. What about extending that placemaking down here? So that was really the impetus behind the whole Mill Creek Boulevard sub-area plan. Took a bunch of time because of COVID and all that stuff. And then along came Vision 2050 that said we were at a high capacity transit community because light rail was coming to Linwood. We've got bus rapid transit. And so that generated into our targets. Again, Mandy's going to talk about how our targets came to us. But then we said, we also have this housing target. So all the work we did back then for Mill Creek Boulevard sub-area study is fed into that. And that's part of the story you'll hear tonight is how that feeds in. It still looks like it's a great idea for where to take that density, not change our single family neighborhoods we all love, but we can accommodate the density where it makes sense, close to transit. So that's kind of the story you're going to hear tonight. Andrew's going to cue it up with some economic factors about this, but then we're going to turn it over to our guests to kind of talk about from a real world standpoint. They've done some work in Bothell, Woodinville, Ken Moore, I think he's got some slides tonight. It's a great opportunity to hear about from a development standpoint what other cities have done to address the same challenge. So we're here from that. And then we're going to turn it back to you. Ultimately, we'd like to get a decision, Planning Commission would like to get a decision on how they move forward, because until they know which scenario to go with, it kind of holds up the rest of the plan. So that's the course for tonight. I took all of your slides away.
That's okay.
But the point is, that's what we're setting you up for, and I'm going to turn it over at this point to Mandy to run from there.
Do I want to go with this?
I think you can stand up here and just work it out, but advance the slide.
Yeah, okay, all right. And we were worried that, it'd be hard for everybody to see the screen, just, in the seating pattern. So we do have a handout here. All those slides are in the handout, so refer to that. I usually don't have a problem with speaking loud, so hopefully that's fine. So I'm gonna kick things off and, just talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan update status, where we are in that process. And then as Mike mentioned, you know, we've pulled together some background planning considerations that are really part of the comprehensive plan update, but also looking back as we look forward and thinking about that. Then Andrew will take over and talk about some of the growth scenarios analysis that we've done to meet the targets that have been allocated to Mill Creek and go through that. And then Mark will then give us kind of that real world perspective on development feasibility considerations related to that. And then at the very end, we want to have a discussion about our preferred direction. So with that in mind, tonight we really want to review and discuss the status of the comprehensive plan, share some key takeaways from planning background, talk about potential growth scenarios and development feasibility considerations, but ultimately what we really need from you is confirmation of the preferred path forward for meeting our growth targets. So geographically, we're going to look at some scenarios, and we really need to hear from you your preference about which direction we should go. The reason why we need this is because we're reaching a point in our planning process where we need to do the housing analysis, the transportation analysis, utilities, parks, other aspects. And so we really need to understand where our growth is going to go so we can make that analysis align and relevant to that. So I think you guys might remember this little chart. We've presented it before. We have been working on a vision survey. We have had a bit of input, but we want to get more, and I know Jody and I are going to work on how to kind of uptick the level of responses to that. It's an online survey to get more input from the community. We will also be going out and doing some public workshops and focus group workshops this spring, so we hope to get more input into the plan and the vision as part of that process as well. Analyzing needs and scenarios, that's what we have been doing in terms of housing needs and different planning scenarios, which Andrew will present tonight. And then we've also started developing draft plan elements, goals, and policies, and have started circulating those through Planning Commission, and we'll be doing that for several months ahead until we complete the goals and policies. So we're really at a perfect place to have this conversation, and we look forward to your input tonight. Just a reminder, these are the plan elements that will be in the updated comprehensive plan. We're pretty excited about a new element, which is economic development. We're not going to talk about that in detail tonight, but it will be something that we'll be talking about in the future, and it does have a lot to do with not only existing business and vitality, but also future and what we want to have happen here in Mill Creek. I do want to mention too that there was a separate plan element, it was kind of unique, called streetscapes, and we have decided that we are going to integrate that into the transportation element, as well as some very specific language in there really needs to go in your code. So we're going to recommend that that be in part of code updates that are coming up. All right, let's talk about planning background. I think this is kind of interesting. First of all, you know, of course, we have the Washington State Growth Management Act, and that is really a guide to us in comprehensive planning. So there's a lot of both older and newer aspects and provisions in the Growth Management Act that we're following. There has also been some recent legislation related to housing and other state legislation. We've talked about that in past meetings, so I'm going to touch on it a little bit today. But we're really mindful of that and what we might expect in terms of growth related to some of that, like the middle housing and accessory dwelling unit bills that came out last year. As we've talked about a lot, Puget Sound Regional Council has Vision 2050. That is a regional plan that really is a framework for coordinated planning across the four-county region, and also includes what are known as multi-county planning policies. There are no shortage of acronyms in planning, right? So the MPPs, and so as we go through and develop goals and policies for Mill Creek, we're referencing the MPPs to show how we can align with those. Similarly, Snohomish County has growth target allocations, responsibilities. They allocate the growth targets to all of the cities in Snohomish County based on a regional model that PSRC has. And they also have policies, county-wide planning policies. Those are CPPs. So if you see the MPPs and the CPPs, that's what those are. We're also referencing those as we develop your draft goals and policies. And then when it comes to local planning efforts, you know, we're thinking about town center planning and how it's been implemented and how important that is to the community. We've also kind of looked back at some aspects that occurred related to the East Gateway Urban Village and that sub-area plan, including a market study that was done for the 132nd corridor. We'll present some highlights from that. Of course, I think many of you are aware of the Mill Creek Boulevard sub-area planning work that was done between late 2018 and 2021. And then more recently, Clay was involved in the middle housing study, which is also really informative to our efforts in pulling together the plan. So this is just a pyramid framework of what I just told you about our planning efforts that were relating to the Growth Management Act, the regional plan, the county plan. Here we are, Mill Creek comprehensive plan in the middle. And then things like the sub-area plans or future sub-area plans, functional plans, which might be your utility plan updates, the transportation plan. Those all need to align with the comprehensive plan as well. And then ultimately, your codes, design standards, other regulations and projects are informed by what's in the comprehensive plan. So I think you're all really aware of the Growth Management Act, but it's something that is kind of just a regular guide to us as we're pulling together this information. And there have been some updates, for example, in climate change and resiliency that's elevated in importance in some of the policy making that we're looking at. The most important thing, though, I think that Growth Management Act really encourages is kind of a bottom-up or grassroots approach to planning. They do want us to align with state regulations and what's happening in the region. But they also want your plan to be your plan. They want communities to have really effective public participation and engagement, and to make sure that their plan is a reflection of their vision and what their community would like to have happen in the future. So that's kind of first and foremost on our mind as we're going through this process. This plan is Mill Creek's plan, and what does it need to include to be effective in that manner? So Andrew's going to talk a little bit more about the middle housing and accessory dwelling and housing needs by income analysis that we've done. But just know that we've done it, and we've got some updates for you on that. And I'm actually going to cover another slide on that too. But let's just talk about town center, because as we were looking back, it was really interesting to kind of see some of the planning documents, and some of those were in the packet that you guys saw. But the planning started in the early 1990s, as Mike said. In 1994, there was a planning document that was created that had kind of summarized the community goals. And we thought that was really interesting because a lot of these goals are very similar to what we're thinking about now in the comprehensive plan for places like, you know, the Mill Creek Boulevard sub-area. They were similar to what people were thinking about for the East Gateway Urban Village. But it's things like encouraging density and a diverse mix of uses in the town center, creating a pedestrian-oriented and transit-friendly town center. This was way before bus rapid transit was even being planned, by the way. Creating a strong identity and a focal point for the community. Well, it sure is that, right? Creating places that provide for the diverse needs of the community, integrating development with the surrounding natural environment. So we have the creek as a backdrop to town center. And then making sure that we're phasing the plan over time to allow for future growth and economic viability. So this was really instructive to us as we started to think about, other areas that could grow in the city. And we looked back at some of the findings or outcomes from the work that was done related to the East Gateway Urban Village in 2015, 2016. So there was a market assessment done, and one of the top recommendations was to complement the highly successful town center. So fast forward, town center's been implemented. It's hugely successful, and you guys should be so proud of that, because let me tell you, we work communities all around the West mostly. So many towns want that there. They want that core place in their town. That's the place where people gather. It's the place where they go. They don't have that. It has to be created. You guys already have it. It's incredible. It's a wonderful place. So what can we do to make that sustainable throughout time to increase business activity there, right? And so back to the East Gateway Urban Village and the market assessment that was the predecessor to that, they were thinking about that too. How do we complement town center? The recommended type of redevelopment was multifamily housing over ground floor retail, and the market has changed. There's even more demand for housing now, a lot higher demand. There's a housing shortage across the region, across the state. So that trend has continued. We continue to see that today. There wasn't a strong market for big box. That's something that they put out there. You guys are probably aware of that if you're involved in that, or a hotel. Even at that time, the demand for general office was limited, but as we know, some medical-oriented uses are in demand and did develop in that corridor. So now, fast forward a little bit more to 2018 to 2021, we were working on the Mill Creek Boulevard Subarea Plan. And the purpose of that was really to evaluate economic development and land use opportunities for this area, actually where we're standing right now, right? And surrounding that south of town center. We had quite a lot of public engagement as part of that process, focus group meetings. We met with a youth group. They were full of great ideas for the community. It was really inspiring. So we gathered a lot of input, and these were some of the key themes that people felt were so important as part of reimagining this part of your town, this Mill Creek Boulevard area. So things like placemaking, to create places that attract people and businesses. That was one of the top things listed, right after thriving businesses, by the way, thriving businesses. Places for events and festivals was mentioned by a lot of people. Creating a stronger civic core. So you have City Hall here, we have some public uses in the sub area. What can we do to even make it feel more like a campus, more like a civic core? And part of that too is parks and green spaces and really leveraging that as a strong asset in the sub area. So some of the key outcomes from the Mill Creek Boulevard sub area planning process was really, again, to complement the highly successful town center. But not just that, we heard loud and clear from you all and from the community that they wanted to extend the sense of place that town center has to the south, to really make it feel like it's all part of your downtown, part of the core of this community. The market analysis that we did found that mixed-use redevelopment with multifamily housing over ground floor retail and active uses is the most viable market type of redevelopment. Lots of ideas about what could happen here in that framework of redevelopment. Placemaking, creating that gateway, as Mike mentioned, but also when we think about businesses and what could happen and what the market calls for, things like experiential retail. I don't know if any of you, by the way, have been to the new Totem Lake Village area, but they have experiential retail could be going into a place and renting those 3D goggles and having all kinds of experiences there. They have a studio like that there, you know, or it could be a games place or a gallery. I mean, there's a lot of different things that fit into that. Different dining experiences, you have a lot, but you could have more craft industry, so breweries, craft distilleries, even other types of craft market arts could be part of this. A market hall, which is something that started to gain a lot of traction before the pandemic, but now it's coming back afterward, where you kind of go and you can have different foods in the same place and meet and eat with family and friends in a market hall environment. We talked about corporate satellite offices. You know, we're kind of a little bit removed from downtown Seattle, downtown Bellevue. Are there some corporations that would want to have a little satellite office here that's accessible by transit? And related to that, work sharing spaces, incubator space for business startups, lots of ideas came out of that process. I think the most important idea was, at the time that we were working on that, we started to see a decline in some of the businesses in town center. So the closing of the university bookstore, I think it was Pier Brown. Yeah. And so there was a lot of concern, and still to this day, concern about that. And so one of the things we talked about is the best way to boost business in town center and even in this sub area is to provide space for more customers. So who are the customers? Those are the people that live and work nearby, that want to go eat that food or experience that retail experience, shop at the grocery stores. We have more people, that helps to sustain those businesses. So just some key takeaways. This was one of the visualizations from the sub-area planning process that we created, showing kind of how we might dress up that pond area out there. Kind of where is it? Yeah, it's over that way, right? And, you know, some of the takeaways. There's a vision statement in your packet and online still, but again, creating that attractive gateway to Mill Creek, similar in character to town center, a vibrant hub for commercial, residential, and substantive uses, and that opportunity to create kind of, this is our civic center, this is our campus here, that people, you know, think of as their home. Just a couple of other things that we did, just to remind you, I thought this was really interesting. The city had gathered some property tax revenue information back in the mid-teens. And, you know, the point was to really look at across the city and understand what areas were generating the most tax revenue, which is really important for operating the city and investing in infrastructure and making improvements. Well, at that time, town center was by far generating the most tax revenue over, you know, other places throughout the community. So we felt it was important to kind of take another look at that as part of the Mill Creek Boulevard planning process. And so we looked at tax revenue at different locations in the Mill Creek Boulevard area of town center. And again, found that a 5-story residential over office mixed-use building is bringing in more revenue, way more revenue than an existing parcel in the Mill Creek Boulevard sub-area, or even a 3-story office restaurant building, which I think we probably know which one that is in town center. So it's just kind of a good reminder of what's helpful in terms of the type of redevelopment and how that helps tax revenue.
So that's based on taxes collected, 5-story residential offices?
Yes.
That's Miravita. So Miravita property is 1 floor of office and 4 stories of condos over it. And so if you look at that's the tax revenue, property tax revenue from that, because there's a lot of dollars of value by stacking it.
That's in town center or in?
Correct.
That's in town center also.
There's the tall condos, you may not even think about it, but they're 1 block off of Main Street.
Right, okay, so both of those are town center, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay. Right, yeah.
Okay, quickly, I just had a couple more slides and then Andrew gets to talk. Just to close out on other work locally that's been done and how it's instructive. So the middle housing legislation and the accessory dwelling units, something we've been looking at, and primarily we want to understand how much change can we expect in the community of that type of growth. But the House Bill 1110, for example, says single-family lots can allow up to 2 units on all single-family lots in the whole state, by the way. So we're trying to understand, okay, where would that happen? How much would we expect that to happen? Andrew's going to talk about that, but it turns out it's pretty limited here in Mill Creek for a lot of different reasons. The good news is we already have quite a few existing middle housing units here in Mill Creek, which Clay's work found 1,466 units, which is 16% of the total housing units. So in a way, we're already providing that choice for people who are looking for middle housing options. And so that housing study was important. It also pointed out some options and recommendations for the city to consider as we're developing policy in the comprehensive plan. So we're really paying close attention. Thank you, Clay, for all the great work on that. And making sure that our policy responds to that as well. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here again, and nice to meet you all, council members, mayors. I'm going to talk about some growth scenarios, and this is mostly related to growth targets, which we've been working with the Planning Commission on for the past couple of months. Just to start out, as you all are no doubt aware, that GMA framework that Mandy showed earlier manifests in one really concrete way to these growth targets. And Mill Creek has got a plan for these targets, which are shown here. Baseline is the current, amount of population, housing, and jobs, and then on top are the new population units and jobs, which are handed down from Snohomish County through the countywide planning policies and in conjunction with Vision 2050. And as part of the new legislation, HB 1220, there's a more stringent requirement to show zoned land capacity to accommodate these new housing units, 2,617 housing units by 2044. So in order to explore where and how that might occur in Mill Creek, we started, with the previous planning work that we've been talking about here, the Mill Creek Boulevard sub-area plan. And if you, notice in your packet where we're involved in that planning process, there were a few scenarios, potential sort of draft scenarios that were explored in that process. Those were developed as a way to sort of test what level of development could be potential to occur in the sub-area. They used a pretty dense 7-story prototype, and they were importantly developed before the revised growth allocations. So that's why the scenarios we're going to talk about today are slightly different from the ones that were presented in that sub-area plan. So I just want to clear that up before we start talking about these revised scenarios. On the middle column here, in the past couple of months, we've been working with the Planning Commission to explore some revised scenarios about where we can meet these growth targets. In the sub-area, we used a slightly less dense prototype, not as tall as the 7-story prototype all around that was used in the sub-area plan. And then in the rest of the city, we analyzed development pretty much consistent with what you've seen over the past 20 years. As part of HB 1110 and 1337, we're required to show some capacity for ADUs and middle housing. We took a pretty conservative approach to this. Most of the city is governed by HOAs, as you know, and a lot of them restrict different types of housing to different degrees. So we just analyzed the areas outside of HOAs to get an estimate of a small number of units that might be expected to occur. So the reason for doing these scenarios is to answer these 3 questions you see on the right. Where can the city accommodate its growth targets? What amount of land use change is needed to meet the housing targets? By amount, essentially being zone capacity. And then, as we talked about earlier, which scenario should we and the Planning Commission continue to study moving forward? So, this lays out the 3 scenarios. Scenario one is quite easy to understand. It's a status quo scenario. So that assumes no rezoning or land use changes. It builds on the buildable land inventory, which classifies how likely parcels are to redevelop. A countywide study that completed in 2021, and assumes only that things would develop on parcels, currently as zoned, keeping with recent development trends. Scenario two is sort of the total opposite. Look at, well, what if we were to rezone the whole sub-area to allow that 5 to 7 story buildings with ground floor commercial? A couple of points I just included. So this does exclude wetlands and undevelopable areas. It also factors in the likelihood that not all parcels would redevelop in 20 years. We'll talk about this kind of more in detail with Planning Commission last month. It's, of course, we know that if you rezone something, it doesn't mean that it will immediately change, and it takes willing property owners and many other factors for things that redevelopment actually occur, not to mention the financial feasibility, which Mark is going to talk about. But anyway, this does sort of look at the potential for what might happen in 20 years if 100% of the sub-area is rezoned. And outside of the sub-area, we did account for the same thing as in the status quo. So a little bit of redevelopment here and there, a few ADUs, maybe a few new single-family homes. And commercially, outside of the sub-area, we also took a little bit of an aspirational look at some commercial land that we thought maybe there could be a little more medical or maybe a slightly denser medical use with a few stories, but nothing really extreme, not just a huge office building or anything. And then in scenario 3, we wanted to explore what the minimum amount of acreage would need to be to meet the growth target. So that turned out to be about 60% of the acreage in the sub-area. So the assumptions for the density are the same as scenario 2, but we just wanted to see how many acres you would need in order to accommodate potential for enough housing units to meet the growth target. But we didn't look at specific parcels. We just looked at the total acreage. And then, as I mentioned on the right, per recent legislation outside of HOAs, assuming 2 ADUs allowed per lot, duplexes allowed on single-family lots. That totals about 25 units of housing that we factored in for those 2 things. So not a ton of units, but it is, an acknowledgement that those changes are coming to your code. So looking at the housing results here, in scenario 1, these are new units. So the baseline is now taken out of here so we can see the results of code. Scenario 1, we would expect, without any changes, maybe 600 or so units, capacity for 600 units under your current zoning. None of them are in the sub-area, which is why there's no light purple on that one, since there isn't really the potential for residential redevelopment here as it currently stands. In scenario 2, with 100% of the sub-area, we get to the target and exceed the target somewhat. This is, and then in scenario 3, as I mentioned, that gets us pretty much to the target with 60% of the acreage of the sub-area. Yes.
Where do the extra 148 show up outside the sub-area? If scenario 1 and scenario 2 are the same.
Yeah, I think we were assuming a little, there were a few other areas, with the EGOV, and there were a couple other parcels that were pointed out that could be a little denser than current requirements. And we built a little bit off Clay's work too, where there were some recommendations for slight increases in density in multifamily zones potentially. So we just we wanted to explore what happens over. Then in jobs, similar picture, target of 736 new jobs by 2044. In scenario 1, without any rezoning, we'd be about halfway there. In scenario 2, again, you densify, so the base, similarly, the base assumption here is what I was talking about, maybe a little bit denser medical use here and there, maybe an office building, nothing too extreme. And then a lot of the jobs are provided by the mixed-use buildings in the sub-area. So we were assuming the ground floor commercial at about 20 jobs per acre, which is consistent with a lot of prototypes that we've seen around the region. And in scenario 3, same picture, you meet the jobs target and exceed it slightly. So that's the sort of math, nitty-gritty of the targets and the allocations. And I'm gonna turn it over to Mark here from Main Street Partners. And,
I have a question.
but we can have a couple questions.
I have a question, because
Of course,
it's gonna bother me until, so your, 5 is saying that the sub-area plan was calling for 100%, but when we did it, it was not calling for 100%.
Right, yeah.
Right, so that wasn't the sub-area plan. And so has something changed to call for the 100%, but that wasn't what the sub-area plan,
Yes.
Yeah, do you want to go through that again?
Yeah, sure.
And I can tag on too.
It is confusing because there were these scenarios in the sub-area plan that were, for lower percentages. And, the reason that we wanted to explore the 100% here, as a potential is because, first of all, the targets that were developed during the sub-area plan were, lower than the revised targets that came through the county planning process. So we needed to, explore the potential for enough units to satisfy the new target requirement. So that's one. And then secondly, we also wanted to look at, what else did I have?
Lower urban.
A lower density, yes. We were looking at a slightly lower density. So this is also something we worked on with the planning commission a little bit too, that, the sub-area plan had a really high, density prototype, like 120 units an acre, 7 stories, assuming that would, be the prototype that would be applied to all the potential acreage. And as well, it looked at all of the area that was being studied redeveloping. So like a full build out of the percentage of acreage that was discussed in the sub-area plan.
And we have heard a lot of concerns about that, you know, being just at that high level, and we thought it'd be better to step back and assume more of a mix of heights from 5 to 7, so.
So you would need more space.
I think well, yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning that part of the discussion the work group had was how do you single out which properties in the sub-area should be given the opportunity to upzone? Well, where do you draw that line?
Well, this is the information, information you're gonna get to discuss with your pretty good, you're starting the discussion. Let's hear from Mark, and then we'll come back to this, and that's exactly where we're going.
I just have a data question.
Yeah.
So, at the very beginning of your section, there's a stat chart, that one. So is there a digit missing in the green box?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So is that 9060?
Well.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a 9.
9, because it adds up to 11.
Yeah, you're right, there's a digit missing, it's a 9.
And then the stack right above that,
The 2616 is our target.
Yeah.
okay, above the 9,000.
So 11686 minus 2616 would be about 9,000 something.
Yeah.
How many units we have today?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Good
No,
catch.
thanks for catching that.
Good catch, yeah.
Why didn't any of us catch that?
I don't know, we've looked at this so many times.
Yeah.
Did you need Connie?
Thank you.
Okay,
So Mark, go ahead.
Mark.
Look at Mark Fetcher from Main Street Partners.
I think we can do this right here.
Good evening. My name is Mark Betcher. I work with the Main Street Property Group, been there since 2011. And in that period of time, we have been the most active multifamily developer on the east side. We focus only on the east side. And the reason being is everybody, vast majority of the group, we all live on the east side. So we take pride in developing in communities where we live, work, play, and we want to create more opportunities for us to enjoy our communities. Have a motto that we like to kind of live by, and it's turning spaces into places. So I've got 3 examples of some spaces that, I think really helped grow the community, create a lot of opportunity, whether it's additional housing, additional tax revenue, a lot of city and public benefits. So gonna try and break these down into kind of different themes with Kenmore, Fossil, and then Woodinville as their own theme. In approximately 2012 or so, we engaged with the city of Bothell. They were looking, there was an RFP process, and they were looking to sell off the park and ride. And they wanted to try and meet, Kenmore, sorry, step back, as we all know, Kenmore is kind of has a highway running right through the middle of it. And it's been a drive-by community for a long, long time. And we engaged with the city manager, the city council, the planning, with the intent of trying to create a town center, something you all already have the benefit of having. But they really wanted to try and create a nucleus, kind of a pedestrian apartment, bring some housing, some jobs, and hopefully create like a catalyst to attract additional investment into the city and kind of create a central spot. So what the city did here, sorry for me, this here is a city-owned building and a city plaza. This is kind of adjacent to the city hall here. But one of the things, I'm going to bounce around just a little bit. One of the things that I think is important as you're working on framework of this plan is to keep flexibility in mind. There are not a lot of 5/2, 7-story, however you want to describe these buildings within the city of Mill Creek at the moment. And the reason is just fundamental economics. So what the city of Kenmore did is they allowed us to kind of proceed in a matter with a slight proof of concept. We did, I will say, enter into a development agreement with the city, and we had a plan, a phased plan, almost a master plan. And so what we did over here was, this is Spencer 68. It's a slight lower density. It's 4 stories, flats with a mix of townhomes with some garages, minor amounts of surface parking. Once that was completed, it was highly successful. We moved into the next one, Spencer 68, which is this here as well. All Spencer 68. Then we have Lincoln Spencer 68. This here has structured parking, but when I say structured parking, it isn't below grade. It's on the ground floor, wrapped with commercial, retail, amenity, communities. That's highly successful because digging down, as you know, parking is one of these elements that are very, very expensive, especially if you have to go subterranean. You know, there are all sorts of, that's a whole different scenario, whether you have deep foundations, water, et cetera, but it all adds up. Enabling a potential developer in the future to have some flexibility to be semi-subterranean or some surface parking wrapped really enables the kind of the feasibility of some of these projects. In Kenmore, city manager was very instrumental in helping push this forward. The council, the planning, they were all very, very instrumental. And honestly, like I'll show you in the next couple slides, I really believe it was a public-private partnership. We provided a lot of benefits from the city, and in turn, they were able to achieve their vision for that portion of the city. So as a result, we built this in phases. We built Spencer 68 here, the second phase of Spencer 68, the link here, which now has a 28,000 square foot evergreen health center in it. And then we built the Seaplane Kitchen and Bar, which is a neat, it used to be called the Hangar. I don't know if anybody's actually been through there. It's a pretty spectacular building. Great place to visit, great place for brunch, great place for beer. It's become kind of a focal point of the community. Now, while this was happening, the city built the hangar here, which kind of anchored this corner as their kind of entrance to the node. And then this is called the Flyway Building, which has approximately 12,000 square feet of commercial in it. Again, commercial that probably would have been viable 10 years ago prior to starting any of the first phase projects. At any time, speak up, raise your, any questions? Yes.
What's in the hangar that you said is city owned? What do they use it for?
Oh,
Sorry,
so
I'm not familiar.
great,
'Cause I
yeah.
saw the city hall across
There's
the
a
street.
coffee shop in there, and it's a coffee shop. It's a privately owned coffee shop. The city doesn't own and operate it, but it's a coffee shop within a public space. This is effectively a park. There are garage doors. This out here, let me scroll.
They can have public meetings there and
Yeah.
all that, right?
Yeah, sorry. So this here, which you can't see, this is a water park also. There are water squirts, and so all summer long, it is just, it screams a community.
running around, parents, and then that's in the daytime. And then there's kind of an agreement, there's a joint use agreement here. So then at nighttime, there's some happy hours, you know, some people bringing their family over here. So this here really has kind of become a 24/7. You know, it's very, very activated focal point within the community.
Coffee shop in there. And that's
Inside the hangar
inside,
building.
and that's in
Correct.
public restroom,
Yes.
and that's it? I mean, I'm not saying that, I can't see the space, the size
Yeah.
of it, so it looks pretty large.
Yeah, it is pretty large.
Yeah. So
But it is community space, they host open houses, community events, planning, updates.
it for like weddings and things
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay, the city
Yeah.
can rent it.
Then they also have public workshops.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful building as well. Yeah.
So Spencer 68 and the other, homes that were started initially, tell me a little bit more about them. How many square feet? Who was the target for that type of housing?
Sure.
Cost-wise, what would it cost? Not to build.
Times changed when we built this.
Yeah, okay. So who was the target and what was
It's
the?
half of what they cost now.
Yeah.
Good question. So, as you'll see in the next slide in Buffalo as well, there was an element of proof of concept. So Spencer 68 phase 1 was, I believe, 96 units. And it was a mix of flats and townhomes, some with structured parking. So we have a variety of units in there. And the flats are gonna be 1 bedroom, some of them are smaller than that. But what we did is recognize, we did a ton of market research and tried to tailor a unit mix we thought was gonna be the ultimate renter here. You know, some fundamentals in Kenmore, great school district, a lot of, you know, the North Shore, property values, it's very expensive to live in this area. We wanted to be able to tailor to families, individuals who are looking to be within the area at a reasonable price point. So the answer to your question, Spencer 68, we have, I don't know what the percentages are from an age, type of demographic, that type of breakdown, because it's constantly changing, but, at that point in time, we have a larger kind of 2-bedroom, the overall average unit size across the board is gonna be closer to, I'm gonna just guess, 850 to 900, whereas in like a Redmond, you may be down closer to 650, 700.
Bedroom,
2-3 bedrooms, yeah.
1,700, 2,500 square feet?
It's gonna be, 2,500 is pretty large, so yeah, we're talking.
1,700 to 2,000.
Yeah. 1,700 is, 1,800 is a great space. And then the link here, this is gonna be closer to like a 750 square foot average. It's purely stacked flats, yes.
And I apologize for not knowing, so, but is that is owned or is that rental?
It's all for rent products.
It's all for rent, okay, and what's the, do you know what the current rental cost is? I wanna know what, like, who the person is that's in there, like,
Yeah.
is it, what is that?
I could give you an answer, but I don't have the
That's fine,
statistics right.
yeah.
We can pull up the website and see what bedroom's going for right now.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
just curious to know.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
drawing sounds really similar. Good schools, people want to live in that area, high cost of housing in that area.
I think potential area that's, the area that you guys are discussing tonight is significantly more attractive than nothing against Kenmore, but it's a challenge with the city, you know, driving right through. You know, they do have access to the Burke Gilman. Point is our region is growing so rapidly that, it doesn't take a whole lot of people, to be completely honest, to attract to these areas and then, you know, do our best to retain them, keep them happy customers. And, you know, if we were to build this tomorrow out here, we would not have any pause with the customers.
Just to help me confirm, these were all rental or some are rental, some, owner?
These are all rentals.
All of them? Spencer 68, everything was all rental, no owner,
That's correct.
occupied, okay?
Yep.
What was the reasoning to that? Why no owner occupied?
So Main Street we spun out of a company called ChemWest. To be completely honest, I don't know if ChemWest is a they used to be a regional home builder, and they sold to Toll Brothers, and there was a 5-year moratorium on us being able to. That's the fundamental. the next slide, we have for sale. Yeah. That's the honest truth is, we were contractually restricted from building for.
Would you have built for sale properties in there?
It's a great question. There's been a lot of for sale built immediately around here. At that time, to be completely honest, we were staffed and modeled for an apartment development company, and a for sale company is modeled significantly different. One great example would be, the warranty and the homeowner, dealing with the homeowners. You know, every home becomes its own individual project, and whereas a for rent project, if you don't like it, you don't have to rent it. You know, prior to opening a for sale project, you know, my favorite, Patty, I talked to her 3 times a day. She got my cell phone number and she would call, and, you know, you have a punch process. They go in and they blue tape it. They're on their hands and knees, and your renter doesn't get on their hands and knees and ask you to fix this, or there's a scratch over here behind the refrigerator, I'd like you to fix it. We feel inclined to fix it. It's nothing different than a new car in our minds, you know, no scratches, things are dents. So, for sale is a very different animal than for rent.
I have one more, so I can find the prices for it, but just, I did notice that there's, it looks like you guys have, there's a low and moderate income rent program. So then there's, because I saw that there's an option for affordable housing, but then it's not really, and then, or, I won't.
So I think what that is, I don't recall the arch, if this is arch, that also might be a link to a current project we're in lease up on, that we have an affordability component.
Gotcha, okay. Because I'm on the website for Spencer 68, and it says our rental program.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but that's why I was curious about,
Okay.
like, the differences, but I couldn't find, I'm just because that's part of our conversation about what is affordability. I was curious of the current project.
Yeah.
So the ministry don't, they do the owner.
Great question. They're kind of 2 different models in the apartment developers. You've got kind of the institutional kind of get in, get out. You build it, you stabilize it, you sell it as quickly as possible. We intend to hold everything. We build slightly differently. Our corridors feel like a home, whereas institutional developer, the corridor is just a corridor, it's just to get you from A to B. We have sold a few projects. Our intent has been to effectively, it's kind of turned out to be build 3, build 2. And so, yeah, it's a different approach. Some of them good selection, the finished selections, that kind of thing. So we actually self-perform, we build them, we develop them, we build them, and then we operate them as well. All right. So yeah, creating community. And again, this is everything we want to do is be a better place than when we found it. And I think we've done a very, successful job of it. Here, just a perspective link. This down here is the community, they call it the town center, the community green. And this is a roof deck. All right, so Bothell. It wasn't too long ago where it felt like Bothell, had some dirt roads crisscrossing down. It's, just west of its downtown, kind of historic little main street. In the mid-2000s, the city of Bothell purchased 18 acres from the North Shore School District. And then they kind of parceled it up. They had a master plan and they developed something very similar to what you all are in the process of doing. They created a downtown sub-area and an associated master plan. Through an RFP process, were ultimately selected as a developer. I've done 7 projects in downtown Bothell, and I can quickly run you through them. But what the city did is this is the cover sheet of their downtown master plan. This all here was basically the bus barn for the North Shore School District. You all are probably familiar. This is Pawkini Stadium back here. Okay. And one of the things that the city of Bothell did that I would encourage you all to consider, they recognized that they had no infrastructure. They had just big blocks, and their opportunities to kind of potentially downtown and create kind of more human scale connections, opportunities for more retail, corner retail, et cetera. So I think I've built a half a mile or more of roads and utilities, et cetera, in downtown Buffalo. And that comes with a great cost. It's very expensive, whether it's dry utilities, wet utilities, sidewalks, planters. Their tree rates are like $8,000 each. It's, watch, be careful on your specifications. Their street lights are $38,000 each. So just mind you, anyway, that's a.
They're really nice.
They credited, so all the extensions, I installed roadways, new sidewalks, public plazas. In conjunction with our agreeing to do that, we offset a lot of the impact fees. So, you know, traffic impact fees, obviously that's always a big one. So they would contribute traffic impact fees. And so what that did was enable the development to be feasible. You know, they got their roads, they got their sidewalks, the multi-way boulevard. You know, I built most of the western side of that. There's a lot of coordination with the city and the staff, and, you know, building a relationship and working with the staff is a key, you know, really being able to make this kind of successful. So, let's see, what about Bothell? I don't know if any of you have walked around downtown Bothell. I think it's turned out pretty nice. Some of the buildings that are about finishing up that we haven't done, I'm a little disappointed with, just the math and bulk. But, you know, they all have the same height limits as the projects that we have done in downtown Bothell. And there is a way to be 74 feet tall and still have a really nice feel where it's not overbearing, it's not overwhelming, and it still creates a really inviting kind of environment. So I think Bothell did a very nice job in conceiving their sub-area plan. And I think I know it's been very, very successful because there are, you know, every developer in town has been, you know, trying to elbow their way into downtown Bothell. It's a great little sub-area that did not exist 10 years ago.
That mainly a rental community also?
So over here, this is about the closest that this looks pretty good. So over here, this is called Dawson Place. That's 47 townhomes for sale. This is 60. It's called the Landing. That's 63 townhomes. And there's 50 back here called the Field House. And townhomes have been successful. Condominiums, we sure like the opportunity, but that's probably a discussion for another day. It's just not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're sued. And it's a very challenging product type to be in. There's only one developer really in all of the region doing it, and they're Canadian. But yeah.
So what's the challenge then with condos?
The condominium laws, the state hasn't gone far enough to reform them to reduce the risk of builders of getting sued. So that's one area where I think the builders and the Association of Washington Cities can actually work together, because I hear it in my circles for the city, and I hear it in my circles for the day job, the master builders. We all want home ownership, but the laws prohibit someone like Main Street from seriously considering it. So I think Intracorp is probably the only one. Is that the one you're referring to?
OSA development out of BC. Intracorp, yeah. There's some opportunities where it just makes sense, and you buy the insurance and you tuck it away, and you just, you know, in your underwriting, you budget for whatever it is. They're going, you know, year 6.5, somebody's gonna knock on the HOA door and say, let me find something to make sure that your investment's protected, which, you know.
We were advised when we went through the e-gov process. I mean, we can't regulate based on the form of ownership. We can't legally do that. What we can do is plan for the type of housing we want and then advocate to get the dang laws changed so that we can have more ownership opportunities built rather than more rentals. Because I hear it from all the mayors and all the cities in Snohomish County. We like multifamily, but we don't want rentals. So we need to change the laws.
So I wanted to understand this better too. I keep hearing about that if we want to build home ownership, multi-level home ownership, we can dictate that. We cannot zone for that. We cannot say that's what we want.
We cannot do that. Advised that by our prior former city attorney, and I'm sure Graham would advise us the same thing.
Like he is.
I get bogged down that we have there's a public memo that was released to the council from our prior city attorney that addresses, so we can dig that up. That's been very clear that we don't have that legal authority.
So the aesthetics that you were putting together versus these other folks, was that driven by you guys, or was that driven by a design and review board that had a lot of control?
Great question. They in Buffalo do not have a formal design review board. They have a design guidelines. In their downtown sub area, they have kind of a prescriptive X percentage, you know, for every 100 feet of facade, you have to have 18% of this facade. And so, you know, it worked, but some of the planning directors have changed, and I think there were opportunities for different type of interpretation. And again, we own and operate these assets, and we want to go and visit them, and we want to go to Quijote and enjoy the night out there and take, you know, we want to be proud of it as opposed to there's a giant monolithic structure. And it's the nature. There's some developers that's their end goal is to, you know, scratch every single inch. And we, you know, are okay sacrificing an inch or two here if the ultimate product is superior in other fields. So, there are multiple ways to govern the exterior look and the feel of the building, but at a basic level, you will need some sort of regulations that doesn't, you know, doesn't mandate people to guess what you want and then get it thrown away, torn up, and then they have to come back, keep coming back. You know, you do have to provide some basic element of a roadmap.
So does the whole area have one comprehensive plan?
So within what we're seeing here, there are 3 different zoning designations. There's a downtown, I believe it's core downtown neighborhood and downtown transition. And there is an element of, and I believe it's governed in stories. It goes 6 by 4, just because they took a holistic planning approach. And unlike your area that you're discussing, you're kind of bound on, you know, you're bound on the east by the highway, and this is more transition to densities.
Was all of that space designated to be redeveloped, or was it kind of developed piece by piece?
It was developed in a comprehensive manner, piece by piece.
So you knew, or the city knew that these other areas, you know, lot A, then lot B, then lot C.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was zoned that way.
But they kind of released them. It was like, we are now taking lot K to market, lot L, lot parcel P, parcel O.
Yeah.
So I kind of rolled it out a little bit, but again, this is a unique situation because they were the owners of 18 acres.
Yeah.
And so that's not, you know, but what I will say that something that's applicable and that could translate here is they did a stationary, or not the stationary plan, but the sub-area EIS. So they took care of all the seed buffer, okay? And so I don't want to say all, but what we did is a planned action determination. You submit 200 units, X amount of cars, X amount of trips, et cetera, and they have X amount of trips, X amount of units reserved in their environmental impact statement that's already been approved. So that does 2 things. 1, it expedites the process, and 2, it delivers certainty. You know, if I'm doing a project, I don't know if the intersection around the corner is going to be level of service F, and I actually can't build 100 units. I can now only build 70. So what it does is provide certainty. Another thing that they also did that I think is well worth considering, in addition to the EIS, is some sort of comprehensive approach to stormwater management, because detention vaults, you know, infiltration, low impact development techniques. Detention vaults, they're very, very expensive. They're cumbersome and they take up room. Low impact development techniques, they feel great, they sound cool, they really don't. Very few locations have I successfully been able to implement them. It's on a very limited case by case basis. So having an understanding, you know, with your proximity to the whether it's North Creek, and I don't know if there's a regional opportunity to have kind of a direct discharge. And then ultimately, you can charge access for developers. We did pay into the City of Bothel's fund for stormwater management. Yes.
So since the city of, I'm using this case, since the City of Bothell owned the real estate, they were parsing out or designating each area, whether, or according to the mayor's now, are you saying that the city or we couldn't create laws or rules that say, well, this area will be residential, this area will be mixed use, this will be apartments, these will be townhomes?
We can do that. We just can't say these shall be ownership and not apartments. We can't dictate the form of ownership. We can dictate the form of use, whether it's townhomes,
Right.
3/1, 5/1, just commercial, retail, single family.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing with kind of some of these catalyst projects, this is a building, it's kind of roughly located right here. It's called Six Oaks. First building built within the new sub-area. They wanted ground floor retail this was a building, 360 degrees of frontage. And they wanted ground floor commercial on all 360 degrees. And we said, you know, so do we. But the worst thing you can have for a building is vacant, empty retail. So as a compromise, we designed ground floor live work units that were easily convertible into future retail. And even before we opened it, we had 2 units that were merged together, and a business went in, and a third business. So, and now at this point, I think the majority of them have now been translated into actual businesses. So, but again, they were flexible, and they appreciated, you know, the end goal and objection here was to get a kind of a catalyst project, get the streets built, and kind of jumpstart the downtown sub area. And it's grown rapidly.
It's similar units at the farm, and they were well received.
Here's a picture. McMinimans also, they anchored McMinimans. They went to the old schoolhouse up there, which, you know, they have a following, they have their own style. It's very eclectic, but it's cool. They bring a lot of music. It's been busy, it's been full. Amaro Bistro, that's another thing we really like to do is partner with our local, restaurateurs, operators, coffee curators, et cetera.
Mark, you
Yes.
mentioned earlier, you know, about creating this aesthetic that is, you know, there's a trick to it. And I think these photographs kind of speak to that really well in terms of creating that pedestrian scale at the street level. So you know, regardless of height or modulation, you have this great street environment, wide sidewalks, street trees.
Yep.
Sort of a formula, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, great points. You know, wide sidewalks so that you know, you can have dining outside. Yeah. Last thing I'm gonna say about this, there were 2 manufacturers of these, and the other manufacturer bought the other one, and the price doubled. And I had to install like heat. It's terrible. So Woodinville, the last kind of case study that we brought, and again, these are all unique in that there was an element of kind of partnership with the city, whether it's Kenmore, Bothell, or Woodinville. All the partnerships were unique, kind of offer different opportunities. So this public schoolhouse district, Woodinville, for a long, long time, had this vision of transforming the city hall, the YMCA area, and the old schoolhouse, original schoolhouse in Woodinville. And it kind of, nobody could figure it out, nobody could come to an agreement. We engaged with the city, and ultimately came to a kind of a win-win program. So here's before. It was, this is the 1903 schoolhouse. This here is the YMCA, basketball courts, et cetera. And this was just very, very dated, low-rise 60s product that the city hall was in. And as a result, you know, we partnered with the city. The agreement was we would rehab, retrofit the schoolhouse. We would preserve and redo the YMCA. This is almost nearly here and around. There's almost 40,000 square feet of public plaza, so this is all deeded, it's easement to the public. This here has now become where they have their farmers markets and 274 units and 35,000 square feet of commercial. And, you know, Woodinville has been a well-established community for a long time, but again, they really haven't had the opportunity of a place you guys have a place, but, you know, for the opportunity to grow and really put your stamp on the future generations and growth of the community is pretty amazing. Again, 75-foot building, you know, this is 29 feet wide, and you walk through here, and it doesn't feel bad. I mean, you don't feel like a canyon. It is open on either side, but again, it just, I think, shows how you can manage heights with kind of activity on either side. Again, a lot of it boils down to just the overall concept of the architecture and the overall planning. So,
There's 3 or 4 wine tasting rooms in that corridor.
yes, there are.
Right, it's all.
Yep. And again, here is, this is now Walla Walla Steak, and, it's a pretty cool spot. I don't know if anybody's been there, but, you know, it's neat to be able to preserve something like this with not only the history, but the architecture and just the bones that have been there for 120 years. Yeah, so here we are, a couple pictures, pizza over here on the, open play fields. And here's another shot of.
That's a really good example on the left of what you've done with Woodinville, because I've been out there a number of times.
Yeah.
You created that open area with fountains and, you know, getting it down to four levels with the retail core. It doesn't seem like an alley.
Yeah, this one's 5 stories here.
Yeah, 5 with the retail, isn't it? Is it 5 with the retail?
Yeah, it's 5 with the retail.
With the retail, yeah, so it's 4, and then a level of retail, 4.
Yeah, and all the height, you know, variances oftentimes between jurisdictions are relative to the fire department's ladder truck. So
I have to
also
compliment you on it.
58, here at 74, and there, you know, yeah.
If you have to create this and keep what we're trying to keep, that look of Mill Creek, that Bothell does not keep that look of Mill Creek, but this one did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has kind of there's a northwest, signature to it.
It's a sweet spot to be at. Very easy to work what we build.
Yes.
I think this plan.
Hard to explain, but this one comes close to achieving it.
You said was there a city building in this area? I'm sorry that I'm not familiar.
Yeah,
I only go to
so this used to be the old city hall here.
okay,
And this here was the YMCA,
right.
and this is the old building, the old schoolhouse, 1903. Here's the schoolhouse today.
Yeah.
We preserved the YMCA and removed all this. City moved next door in a beautiful building.
You did just next door?
Yeah.
Okay. Did they own that land where the city hall, I'm so sorry, I interrupted you. Did they own the land where the city hall was, but not where the Y is or where the,
They owned it all.
they owned it all, even the Y was on
We
land
needed
they.
the Y back in the city, the schoolhouse. So, yeah, there was a development agreement, in place here to help govern the overall, process and development. All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you,
so
Mark.
it's easy to dive into these particular projects, but we want to give you a sense for what's going on in other places. You
Yeah.
think back again, 2004, we were at the forefront with Town Center. Everybody was coming from around the state to see what we did. Here we are 20 years later, some other places that we've kind of, Kenmore, Bothell, whatever, they've done some pretty cool things. And so don't get too wrapped up in this particular ownership style or that particular ownership development approach. We just want to bring in a real life example. These guys like Mark and Main Street Partners and others get excited by the opportunity to say, this is an opportunity
Yeah.
to do something. So that was kind of the point, was give you a flavor of that. At this point, I think we want to pull it back up to the main question is, what do we want to do? Where do we put our growth? A couple more slides from Manny and Andrew, then we'll turn over for
I'll
discussion.
turn the slides, you can talk, Andrew.
Okay, well, yeah, and we don't need to belabor this too much, but, we did just want to sort of summarize some of the thoughts that we had on this and that we talked about with the planning commission and Chair Nolan and Mike. And just think about the sub area here, and there's just 2 slides. So the first one is why rezone the sub area, and these are sort of, for your consideration, in this conversation. I mean, there's some sort of more obvious things that we've gone over. It's the best location to meet the housing unit target. We've got to meet the housing unit target to get the comprehensive plan adopted by the state, obviously, and the county. But also, you know, as we've said a lot, it's building on the success of town center, the potential for a vibrant neighborhood, more placemaking. You know, we did talk about property taxes. There's been a lot of good studies that have been done showing the benefits of multifamily housing, you know, on property tax and impact fee generation, compared with lower density housing. There's, you know, we haven't talked a lot about, demographics, you know, well, we did sort of get a little bit into this, who would come and live here. You know, there are, a cohort of older residents in Mill Creek. Often when people get older, they want to downsize or need smaller units. There's, you know, the potential for younger people, who want to return to the community, who remain in the community, create more opportunities for those, future residents. And of course, it's positioned well for the connection to the new BRT in Laurel, Linwood.
You know, something else that we've talked about, because we've been working in your community for years now, and we hear about, you know, how important it is to protect the single-family neighborhoods that are just a part of Mill Creek and a part of what people appreciate about living here. So when we think about where to put growth, know that it shouldn't be in single-family neighborhoods or even right next to them. So this particular area, for that reason alone, is one of the best areas of the city because it's not right next to the, you know, community club or other subdivisions.
Yeah, and it sort of has that added benefit as well of creating more opportunity for the town center to grow, from a business perspective as well. You know, more people nearby that can walk to things in the town center, more opportunities to increase retail in the town center, and et cetera. That's talked about. And
you want me to go back?
No, I, you know, and this goes to the 60 versus 100%. So where we're going, as you know, is, you know, some direction on how to proceed in a comprehensive plan for the area. And we did put together a few thoughts about the advantages of rezoning the whole sub-area. And, you know, one thing that Mark talked about is, you know, opportunity, the increased cost of development. The fact that developers are having, you know, to pay a lot more to get things built, it's much less feasible than it was, you know, back when they started out in Kenmore, et cetera. And so, you know, providing more choices increases the likelihood of things happening and increases the likelihood of all these benefits we've been talking about. And also, you know, the market could change. We do expect interest rates to at least stabilize and maybe go down over the next 20 years. We would at least hope, to some degree. And, you know, if you're, as to the point that you made earlier, I think, Mayor, what parcels would you rezone? And if so, then the parcels that don't get rezoned could have some sort of very odd economic effects of their value being inflated or deflated. And on the same note, you know, that could also potentially, depending on where the zoning goes, prevent the opportunity for things like parcel assembly or working with property owners who may be adjacent to get things done. And even so, you could say, sure, that could be rezoned down the line if some property owner, you know, comes to the table with an idea, but the comprehensive plan and the associated development regulation changes, which are going to happen anyway, are an ideal time to get these things. And finally, I just want to say two more things, and then we'd love to have a discussion with you, of course. The likelihood of everything changing is very low. We know that development has increased in cost, even built into our model of the 60 and 100% rezone scenario are the expectation that not everything will redevelop over 20 years. And in fact, the mandate from the CMA and from the county is really that we plan for the capacity to accommodate these targets, not that they're going to come and check it, you know, in 20 years that, you know, that things have turned out exactly as they were zoned, or exactly as they were conceived, but that the potential for these units to be built to accommodate the growth that's coming to Mill Creek and to Sandwich County is there. So.
Okay, good. That's
Anything else from your end?
No, I think that's good. Just before we want to open it up for discussion, but just a quick reminder, this is our schedule as we're working on the comp plan. So we're starting to work on the economic development element next, but all of these elements that are in bold and have a little star by them are really, dependent upon having a direction for where growth is gonna go, right? So that's why we're here tonight. We really want to hear from you about, a decision on one of these scenarios. And so with that, we want to really turn it over for discussion and, you know, hopefully we can reach that decision tonight.
Before we start discussion, can we take care of some business so we don't have to interrupt the discussion? Should we extend the meeting to 9:30 or 10? 9:30?
9:30.
My God, give us.
Motion to extend to 9:30.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? Okay.
I think it's really for the two chairs now, it's your meeting. Maybe Matthew wants to,
Thank you. The one thing I would like to point out as we talk about the sub-area plan and being involved in that, the city council, I gotta really thank you, because when we embarked on that in 2018, that was a cut-through road. That was the plan. It was gonna take traffic around. And so even as we look at where we're at today, we're talking about a whole different set of things than we were back in 2018, when that was just gonna be, how do we relieve traffic through? And so we've come a long way, and what we need is guidance from you on how do we want to move forward over the next 20 to 40 years in our city. And it is an exciting opportunity. And I think you've seen a lot of interesting things today, but we're really talking about density, this very high level thing. Then there's the ownership that we can work on as a city. There's a sub-area plan that we can develop coming out of a comp plan. There's a sub-area EIS that if we want to go there. And then stormwater management, you heard about that. But today, really, the conversation is about density. And as we live in a beautiful region where thankfully we have this issue about density, because I'm just so glad I live here, not in Detroit, where people are talking about what do we deal with the houses that have been abandoned, you know? And you just got to step back and go, how do we make this a great place for the next generation? And how do we continue with the things that our community loves? And I look forward to hearing from our elected leaders here about what you want in your guidance as we go forward. But it is this very high level thing, because as Mandy pointed out, there's taskmaster on the staff on, you know, we're already in economic development. It's supposed to be February.
Yeah, I'll just say to kick things off, I hope you found this presentation helpful. Just a little background. The reason why Main Street is, I've known Eric Campbell, the owner for a couple decades, and the current president, I taught tennis to back in high school. Kelly Price. So when we were talking in December about how to kick off this discussion, I just thought back painfully to our discussions about the EGOV, about why don't we have a Cheesecake Factory or an REI coming here or a Nordstrom's coming here. So the intent was to get a little bit of realism into here of what we can expect and not expect to be developed. To me, this isn't just about housing. It's probably more about economic development. And what we've heard a couple times over the last 7 or 8 years is you need bodies to spur economic development. So housing provides those bodies, but it's not just providing housing for the sake of providing housing to meet numbers. It's really a bigger issue of economic development for the next 20, 30, 40 years in the city. With that, I'll shut up and then let's hear from everyone on the table.
I have questions, but Ben had his hand up.
So I have 50 million questions. So I want to go back on to the whole discussion around, and my questions and concerns around the 100% development, and kind of some things that I'm thinking of, and so maybe I'm thinking wrong, and you guys can tell me if that's the case. So some of my concerns on this is, one, look, we don't own this. So if we go and we upzone the whole space, we can't control what gets developed first. So to me, I realize that we would be creating an environment where we may change the price of some land different than others, but we're giving up the control that we would have to decide where it's going first. So also I look at EGOV and how that did not turn out the way it was hoped and planned. So I feel like if you just go and say the whole space is available without strategically saying where and when, then, and doing it in phases, then we lose control and no telling what that's going to look like. And that's kind of,
Well, I guess that's my big concern, is really that if we were to do the whole thing, we lose any control over what is gonna happen when. And I don't want it to be a hodgepodge of development in there that doesn't make sense. I would like it to be a cohesive plan, and we don't own it. So we have to work around that best we can.
I do understand, and I think you're making a really good point, Deputy Mayor Vignal. I do think that we've done enough analysis that we kind of know which properties are more likely to turn over in the nearer term versus longer term. So maybe we could bring that back. I think we've looked at that a few times. Maybe that would be instructive.
I don't think it's losing control. We never have control. That's the challenge with it. It's the same thing we faced in EGOV. The reason why, I don't want to say it wasn't successful, it wasn't as coordinated because we didn't have one property owner or a small group. I think the sub-area is a little different because there are a couple property owners that have big chunks in that sub-area. So, you know, we unfortunately don't have the ownership of that would be much easier to create that plan and then do what the city of Bothell did, but that's not our reality. All we can do is set up the plan and let the private sector try to implement it.
I think one of the things that Mark talked about, and we've heard of the times, is, for instance, regional stormwater. We can do regional stormwater to handle a certain purpose there, or in the EIS for a part of it, or a planned action for a part of it. Don't know if that's the right idea, but I mean, I think that.
Well, it sends a signal, certainly, you know, if the city decides to invest in a certain area, a certain portion or section of the area, for sure.
So, I share the same concerns as the Mayor Pro Tem about, I guess we'll just use that term of flexibility or giving up the control over the region by just, by doing the latter. And I don't use EGOV as a comparison. I think for me, EGOV is kind of a one-off. It's off the beaten path. It's not right on 164th, the Bothell River Highway, so it's not really an apples to apples. So I would ask this is what is the tone or flavor from the actual stakeholders, the landowners down the east? You just mentioned a second ago that couple that either had big spaces and.
Well, and I think, you know, as part of our upcoming engagement, we would make a commitment to retouch with some of the owners and get their perspective, because it has been a couple of years since we talked with them, but probably some of the commissioners can help me recall in our discussions, you know, for example, Tim Panos was heavily involved in the discussions and, you know, was interested in the rezoning, but understood that because, you know, his property, they have a lot of long-term leases, and some of those wouldn't be viable for redevelopment for, you know, several years into the future. He understood that, you know, well, he saw the benefits of being rezoned and the potential for that, but he understood if it wasn't, you know, first in the phase to happen. But he was interested in it, so I think it would be, and it's a new day, things are happening, perhaps there's some changes in his leases, but, you know, I think it'd be worthwhile to touch base with a few people. Yeah.
And I think also, you know, one could make a counter, you know, you could counter argue that, that the potential for, you know, because you don't own any of it, that there's really, it's not clear, or like 100% clear really what the Catalyst project would be. And one thing I think that Mark talked about was the importance of a Catalyst project. So, you know, the market could actually, you know, provide a sort of direction in that sense if there were to be an opportunity that, you know, a property owner that was really keen to take advantage of this in the short term, that could provide a catalyst and then, you know, could sort of expand from that point. So that was just another thought I had, you know, that it could kind of be, but to go from the opposite direction. But yeah, I think, you know, looking back at the interviews from the sub-area planning process recently, you know, I think there were 5 or 6 property owners that Zach and Leon interviewed, and they were generally supportive of the idea of rezoning it. There was nobody that was like staunchly opposed. It was more, they're just thinking like, well, great, increase the value of my property. I have more long-term potential, but, you know, some of them were much more, you know, convinced that that nothing was going to change in the short term because of what was going on with the property.
I would say that the current property owners don't have a long-term vision. They're owning the properties to maintain them for current cash flow and current investment. So it's not gonna be, I'd say it's probably 1 in 100 chance that one of the current owners is the one who redesignated any portion of the area, that they're the ones that actually do this. Be a situation more likely where we change the zoning, it increases the value at some point, the market rises, and the property owner says, that's it, I'm putting my chips in, I'm gonna let Main Street or someone else come along, buy the property and undertake it who has a longer term vision. There's too many businesses to disrupt and deal with.
That's the other piece, sorry, John, if I can just finish. I think that's the other piece that we also have side by side. Some side by side analysis is still a retail sales tax aspect and a commercial aspect here that still applies, that's generating revenue for the city. You did the comparison of single family dwelling versus tax income base, and so I think it'd be helpful to see both of this side of the sales tax and the commercial side versus the property tax.
So you're thinking of existing uses like Safeway, QFC, the tax revenue that's generated from those versus what it would be with redevelopment? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Can you explain to me that I'm still trying to, I want to understand this loss of control. What do you mean by that?
So I think it would be really easy if we just upzone the whole area. That's what she was thinking, is that we would have these spot carvings with maybe 6, 7-story apartment buildings randomly inserted in the area that was zoned up, opposed to maybe taking a quarter of that segment of property and saying, hey, this is where we'll start first. Now you can all have at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand it a little bit. I mean, we do have that option.
Was that where you're going, Steph?
Yeah, that's right.
And we do have, when we talk about rezoning, I think what we're referring to is rezoning the whole area, that they haven't defined what would be rezoned within the area. You might have the control you're talking about. We could choose in some areas to rezone it for higher density than what it is now, but maybe not for 4/1. Some of the areas may be appropriate for 4/1 and others are for townhomes. So rezoning, I think we're getting confused by the rezoning 100%, because we can, within that 100%, determine what zone to rezone, the areas within that too, to allow.
So we maintain control of how that would break out in that larger area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we pick the 60% number, we are right at what the minimum is. And are we picking winners or losers? And are we literally saying, only these properties get to redevelop over the next 20 years and these other people can't? Or are we gonna come and take a second bite at it? That's this weird piece of it. And how do we keep control over time?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, sorry to interrupt. We're gonna say something.
Yeah, I was, well, actually, I'm gonna admit, how ignorant I am, and I need to kind of clarify a few things in my own mind here. When we talk about this sub-area, get it from 164th and Mill Creek Boulevard, all the way over to the reservoir, the water pond, whatever.
Like the west boundary of the city.
Okay, but to that water reservoir, that's one area. Then we get into like the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and are we talking about that entire area all the way up to City Hall? Okay.
Yeah. There was a,
Including City Hall.
Including, let's put the conversation back up if you're listening.
I rezoned them.
So that's where I have a. Yeah, that's where,
Okay.
okay,
Oh,
so,
that's the wrong
right.
Sorry, let me see. I think here it is.
So here's my thought, my question. So, you know, when I look at that area, there's, I understand that, and I think, talk about 100%. There's chunks of it that make so much more sense. Like that first chunk that is right, that first retail core, where, we know where the reservoir is and, what's that,
Ritual or whatever that.
yeah, there's a retail, strip and there's also the big one that just closed.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Haven.
Haven, thank you. So the Haven just closed, right? So now you've got, that's a big chunk of real estate right there. And the rest of them are all small retail locations that would easily fit into the vision of this, you know, new single, retail first level. So when I think of 100%, and I was telling myself I'm wrong, but I was thinking that's 100%, that area being redeveloped first, makes so much sense to me before we get into the sheriff and the fish and wildlife and all the rest. But there is a ultimate vision here of carrying this look all the way into, our town center. I get that. But that's where the whole thing gets so complicated, is when we start getting into some of these other buildings, some of these other entities, and how do we handle the sheriff, and how do we handle the fish and wildlife, and how do we handle all the doctor's offices and everything else. But that first little section, I would think would be, and I think that's the one, Brian, you were talking about when you said you knew the real estate people, was that retail core, am I right? Is that retail core that's right there, past the Union 76 gas station, strip mall that goes right next to the Haven, connected to the Haven? Is that the retail person that you said you knew? I thought that was the name I had heard.
Winger Insurance.
Yeah, we get in there. I think I heard, a couple people I know, that's a more controllable environment, a controllable number of people. So if we could take that on, and if I was an owner of that and opportunity to redevelop that, all of my tenants are going to be much more amiable to going into the kind of retail core, and we could build this, you know, show them what it will look like, in a shorter period of time, and then maybe reconnect that second level. I mean, town center wasn't built all at once. It was built in chunks, because nobody would believe it all at once. And once you got the first part built, other people wanted to build other parts like that. So maybe, in my mind, I'm thinking that first part is the easiest part to build. And the most amiable to the retailers and tenants that are in there right now. I mean, who cares how long their, leases are? Yeah, they could go in between, you know, while their leases are still in effect, they could move right into work out some kind of compensation for lost revenue.
So only designate that area?
Just that area.
So where do we put the other housing units we have to plan for?
We have to do at
Yeah.
least 60%.
Right. We'd be doing
to qualify.
100% of that area, and we do 4.
But there's not enough
Yeah.
acres, yeah.
Yeah, what I'm thinking, okay.
No, finish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. If you could tell us, okay, if we did 100% of that area, and if we did, 4 or 5 stories, whatever we determine, we're only going to accomplish X of our goal. But it might be a significant part of, I don't know what our number is, how much it would be.
Well, we kind of already did that math, and so we really, at a minimum, we need to redevelop 60% of the entire, so we've got the map up there, 60% of the entire land area of the suburb.
Excluding the wetlands.
Excluding the wetlands, excluding the substation, yeah, I mean, it has to be buildable area.
And when I think about that, I go, is that even a realistic vision to talk about fish and wildlife and the sheriff?
It's really up to the market, yeah.
When I think about that, I go, there's gotta be a real.
And how do we, we could incentivize by upgrading the infrastructure, right? We could maybe make a parcel look more agreeable to redevelopment sooner than another parcel, by putting some investment in that infrastructure. And then also, we need to start lobbying for some changes in the laws around condominium liability. Because if that's the key to the reason why developers do not choose to build units for sale, that's one of my main irks. We have a lot of apartments in our.
I think that's getting into the strategic future for implementing the plan that we decide we want to see for that area.
Exactly, but if we can have some strategy discussions, that would be more amicable.
Well, but I think we're here to first come up with the plan before we come up with a strategy for implementing it. We gotta decide what the plan is.
John, to John's point though, and just kind of paraphrase what you're saying, you feel that should be like the first domino fall over, right, to start the process, but.
And maybe there's some
what's
things
the
that we
domino?
could do to make that domino be more agreeable.
No, that's no.
But it's not going to get us to our goal, but it's going to it's gonna hopefully get us further down with the rest of the sub-area if we started there. That's a controllable. That's the most controllable of all the sub-areas. The rest of it to me is.
60%, it doesn't get us to the number.
No, it doesn't get us to the number.
Problem.
But then again, would there be other solutions to get us to the number? Is the sub-area the only place where we're gonna get to that number?
That's it.
Yeah. Well, are there other solutions that could get us to that number? Oh, there aren't?
No. Yeah, maybe we should mention,
And
the
if
planning
they-
commission,
what
there
about
have been
annexing?
many meetings where we
Can't annex
have, where we
Can't annex out.
Yeah.
The numbers will just grow, but you have to plan for
Well, the UTA has its own targets as well.
it. Right, so when we annex, we inherit the growth targets for the annex area as well, so it's not like we can claim units by annexing those existing units.
I really wanna mention, so within the planning commission, so.
My wife wanted to talk first, but I'll let her talk. She gets to go first.
No, because that's the response to the second.
So I was gonna respond to that, so the cop mentioned there about, other areas to study. Over multiple meetings, over many months, the planning commission has looked at various scenarios. You're probably getting the last effort after all that, where they looked at all the developable land in the city of Mill Creek, what you could actually build, and it came nowhere near the number we did.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate, that. So I had a couple questions, before, as we go through, looking for guidance. The first is, did we ever own the land that was on Town Center? That is currently, so.
Yes, we did, actually, where Boston's is, the city owned it, had a plan to build a community center there. Had 30% designs, and then found out how much it would cost to run it, and said, oops, get that.
How many acres was that? Do you remember? It wasn't all of
Boston, 3 or
Town
4.
Center.
It was
No,
three.
just the Boston.
Just the Boston.
And
City owned that piece.
and I
With the
asked,
intent of, we had to help jumpstart this thing. Fred Jacobson, instead of building where Aztec is, he's the guy who first jumpstarted.
because I just wanted to understand that, because I'm not saying no to what you were talking about, like, oh, we're not gonna be able to maybe get a really cohesive feel to it, but we're really in the same spot we were for Town Center. That's not ours. We don't own it and then are now telling people. We had to zone it and then provided the parameters of what we were looking for. And we can get pretty strict, I assume, with our design review, with all of those codes. So we get where we say we want this to feel connected in that. Because I like the example shown of that it really feels like you're in a similar space. So that was my first question about Town Center. The second is, why is the most southern spot in the map for development, the Village by the Creek and Mill Creek Square, QFC, why is there nothing past that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It is a good question.
That was the way we defined the sub area back in 2018.
So I'd love if we could look into that, because now we have, Four Stitch Brewing, there's a Kids in Us, and then there's a wonderful, that's the ribbon, physical, hold on, someone remind me, personal training. Momentum, yes, next to Four Stitch Brewing I've been to, that I can name.
So you look at likelihood of those things happen, are those gonna get resolved next 20 years?
Probably not.
There, and there's a couple properties maybe, and there's not a lot of capacity.
No, and I totally agree about but I'd love for it, the water, but I'd love for that to be what it's like to look at that when it comes to this, because it shouldn't just, because those business owners already feel left out.
Oh,
And while they may not look at this and go, we don't wanna be redeveloped, you've already developed us, I think it's important to note that all of it, and including what are the other properties that could be. Because Councilmember Allison and I have talked about walking that area to the North Creek Trail and, if there's a certain vibe to it. So I'd love for that. So that's my second comment.
Melissa, I'm sorry, what space are you talking about?
South of QFC, behind it.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
before this brewing, and all the way to North Creek Trail.
Yeah.
So ninth goes all the way down, so this is QSP, and
Yeah.
red area is all zone community business. And it goes a little bit south, and then it turns into gray, which is business park
Yeah.
Yes,
kind of thing, but it gets very industrial and go very far down here.
Wet.
Yeah.
yes, underwater, for sure.
There's the stormwater management area and wetlands, and,
Yeah.
I was going to say that
Yeah.
property below there is owned by the state of Washington, it's washed off property for a potential.
Fantastic, but I'd like that, acknowledged here, is that like, as part of us understanding what all that zoning is and what is ours.
Okay.
The third, we talk a lot about the ownership aspect, about we can't, and so then this might be a question for Grant or for, I always lean to our mayor because of his expertise in this. But what about, designating for, like, senior housing? Because I see that as like a significant need. Can we really push that is what is developed in these areas? Or can we, just like condominiums, we can't tell people ownership, can we also say it's not? Or is it?
I doubt it, but
Because wouldn't it be like for housing?
Well, that's why, like, there's incentives, because I feel like that's a community that needs, that this is now my soapbox, so I guess I can speak, right? One of the things is we can't have younger families buy into the single-family homes because people are holding on to their single-family homes longer, which is fantastic. And while some people who have single-family homes and would like to downsize, there's really no value in downsizing because it's gonna cost more than their home that they're currently in with the land and the space. So if we ideally can incentivize homes that are close to walking, transit, things that our senior population would like in terms of that, having that community, which would allow then, future generations to be able to purchase those single-family homes. I feel like that's what we're missing in
We
that.
kind of did that with vintage, if you remember,
Yeah.
by incentivizing, not incentivizing, but it all falls under the category of lower income housing, correct?
Well, they had a specific financing mechanism they relied upon. How I had answered, we could plan for the type of housing, then incentivize through development regulations what goes in there. We could decide to do a multifamily tax exemption credit that might spur a low-income housing developer to come in. We could give breaks on impact fees for certain types of development. We could, those types of things are within our control, but we can't say, we want age-restricted housing there, or we
Yeah.
want this type of.
Thank you, and I assume that was the case, but I wanted to understand better, since this is not my world, how to get that. And as we're talking about as you're asking us, what are we looking for, what's the direction? I want to say, that's one of the things that for me is really important, because I keep seeing this conversation about being able to provide the opportunity for existing homeowners to be able to downsize appropriate and allow that.
stay in the community.
And stay in the community, because they still want to be here, but they don't need that.
And open up their own.
And open up their homes, because the home that they needed so long ago, maybe for physical ability, many reasons,
Yeah.
it's not the best. And then it allows people who are trying to buy into the homes some accessibility. Okay, so that was my next question there, and then, we keep talking about the buildings, about what we can do, but we can only just be in charge of rezoning, right? So at the end of the year, as part of the comp plan, we just need to show how we've rezoned it to allow for it, right?
Proposed rezoning.
Right, proposed, and so that's really, at the end of the day, the result for it. But even then, our plan as a council for next year would probably then take a look at that, and how do we then figure out the codes and the design review, like, that's like next year after. So we'll have, we need to have a plan, and I'm sure Director Todd and the manager, and everyone has already thought through, but I wanted to make sure I understand, that's what council's responsibility for, our next retreat for next year, once the comp plan is done, is we need to figure out how do we then, what we approved, now how do we tighten it in, or not tighten it, but how do we allow for those opportunities, right?
Right, and I think also the point about investment in infrastructure that was made, for example, that pond area is owned by the city. It's not a natural wetland or anything. It can be dressed up. You could have, boardwalks or areas where people can gather in that area. Maybe some investment in that area can help incentivize redevelopment next door at the Haven in that area. So, not Haven anymore, but whatever it was.
And that's something that I was really interested in, was really making that space look prettier and tie in back to North Creek Trail right there too.
The street improvements could also help. So as Mark was talking about, I think, you know, in a lot of those communities, the cities did take on some infrastructure responsibilities. They went after grants. They allocated funding to do street improvements and things. The developer also built a lot of streets. Mark said he built a lot. But it was sort of a shared responsibility.
Oh, can I add one more thing from my thought before we go to the other council members? I'm actually, because we were talking about areas that you were interested in, and I don't know how many booths I'm gonna get, but I'm really interested in looking at that big chunk where our grocery store is currently, that Safeway area. That seems, you know, I had many thoughts about the sub-area plan when it first came out before I was on council, and there's that whole, you know, process and all that kind of thing. But as I've learned and listened to the planning commission, and the thoughts there, that's the area I think that makes, because of the width and the space and, you know, opportunity to look more like maybe the things we saw, in terms of building that kind of community and what does that look like for that whole area? Because, you know, face it, grocery stores did used to just be by themselves, but now, you know, there's many that are the first floor. You know, and it's really about the public safety aspect of what some of those things might, you know, be needed for those areas. But so in terms of like looking at the plan, that's kind of the one I'm most excited about because it's the largest in terms for what that redevelopment might look like.
We have one of these maps that shows how much of that sub-area would be 40%.
40%? Well, we don't have one with us, Mayor, but we can definitely figure that out. I think, my recollection from the last planning process was that 50%.
If you just took the northeast quadrant, so from, I don't know what the street number is, if it's above Rite Aid, between Bank of America and Rite Aid, if you went from, sorry?
That's 161st.
161st, I mean, I think we're getting hung up on this rezoning of 100% versus 60%.
Yep.
I mean, really what we're talking about, we could rezone 100% of it, but only 60% of it would allow the housing we're talking about. The other 40% could be rezoned for something more than what it is now, but maybe not include housing or may include less intense housing.
And that can also be, managed through a plan to action, EIS, because you can set a threshold, you know, for an allowed. So what that means though is if you rezoned 100%, that you said within this, 60% of it, you know, that density can be developed under our plan to action CEPA. That does mean that other developers could come in, they'd have to do their own CEPA, which would be a disincentive as Mark spoke to, but that's one way to do it.
Yeah. I think we're getting hung up on that rezoning 100%, not, because we can do 100%, but not do all of it housing. As long as I understand, as long as 60% of it would allow the housing we need to reach our housing target.
Well, I think our calculation was 60% needed to be that 5 to 7 story, and yeah.
I think that's a key piece, and why I mentioned, you know, we'll get to those things. We're talking about density and what does the council want to see, because I heard a lot of comments as the presentation went through that the 5/2 or 7 stories or 74 feet, that makes people very nervous. So from the plan to now, what we did is went back and asked our consultants, hey, look at some of this 4/1 and some of these others, but that meant that the 60% didn't make the number anymore, so we get to 100%. And one of Al's last comments to me before he left was, hey, this could even include some of the, what do they call them, the town flats and going in there. So what we need to do is kind of look at, if we're looking at this overall area and saying, would this housing of some sort be okay, then we can further define, is it the 5/2, is it the, you know, and there was some fear, definitely. We did 60% early on in the 2018 study, and it was 7/2, and I think as our developer told us, well, you can make that look maybe high some of it.
The less area we have, the more height we need.
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't know if Mark spoke to this, but, you know, there are just some advantages from a placemaking perspective to having podium construction 5 to 7 stories, because you're not gonna have as much surface parking. You're gonna be able to tuck that parking in the building if it's taller. And so we already have a lot of surface parking, which kind of affects the way this area looks. So it's just another consideration. Clay has
Clay,
a
go ahead.
comment, yeah.
Just a comment for you to consider. You know, think about your comprehensive plan is gonna set that policy direction. It's like laying that foundation. So it sets that up, you know, you can set those policies that help you plan for the future. Development regulations would come later, but it really is just an opportunity when if you look at the whole area, to think about, things in totality instead of breaking it up. I think that there are some strategic advantages at least to talk about thinking about as a full policy directive, what do you want to see for that entire area? How do you want to see that implemented in the future? If you're looking at how to implement it in the future, if you were to do a planned action EIS, would it be better to look at little pieces at a time or look at how things might roll out for the full sub area? I think you have more control over how development occurs than you think, and that would be how you implement your regulations. Right now, think about it, you're just visioning, just the vision. So what you're thinking about is, are we gonna be setting that vision for one particular area or a larger area, and then studying that as one large kind of group of area of what you wanna see for housing, retail, how much is it gonna cost to develop the infrastructure, and what we wanna see our open space networks look like, or are we gonna take that in chunks? And so, there's not necessarily a right way, but I think that if you look at things as one, you probably might get a better product overall over time, figure out what you want to do. Just something to think about.
I looked at the packet and it had the pictures of what the old timers like Todd had done. Original town center. I don't know if any of you saw those, right? The sticky notes, the beards, sorry, Dan, the beards and everything. You know, there was a real sense to me of inspirational vision. Let's go do something big. And this feels kind of like our generation's opportunity to plan for something big. And when we did our retreat over the last couple of weeks, I didn't hear anyone say, let's make our vision smaller. We're taking on too much. Let's limit the choices that we have. This is a way for, I think, we can say, Planning Commission, think big, but know that we want to keep control of what that build out looks like. And to me, that's almost the best of both worlds. If we plan for small, we're going to get less. And, you know, I've heard people talk about this for a long, long time, which is that growth builds community, atrophy kills community. We're a little bit in an atrophy state right now, coming out of the pandemic and whatnot. There's an opportunity for us to grow and to make this community something more special or continue the special. The alternative isn't something less good. The alternative, I think, is actually fairly poor. You don't need to shoot for the perfect, because that's not going to happen.
So, Mandy, do you remember, are there like 35 pieces of property?
Yeah, that's about right, Dave,
That's
good
what I sort of
memory,
remember
yeah.
from the study.
I think some of the results of our last analysis, just to name a few things. So areas south of 164th, like the Mill Creek Square and the Village by the Creek, those businesses are really thriving. There's some fairly new re-tenant design spaces in there that have recently redeveloped. There wasn't a thought that those would really redevelop anytime soon. Same with the Maple Leaf Square. You know, that's a pretty thriving little corner thing there with lots of businesses, and Aztecas there, right? So then, if you take those out, and you take out the post office, I don't know.
You never know.
But you take out the substation, I mean, that's about 60%.
Oh, wow.
Roughly,
Thank you for that.
yeah,
So everything except those 2 or 3 pieces,
yeah,
okay,
That's 60 already.
you're 60,
yeah.
so everything north of 164.
So then there's really not to your comment about like the direction of like 100, or, I mean, really, it's.
Even if you rezoned all of it, I guess just when you kind of look at the writing on the wall, as far as what, you know, what's likely to happen based on business activity. People that have thriving businesses are not gonna wanna redevelop their properties.
Right, right. But we're also looking, it's a little bit of a game of
Yeah.
what we need at the end of the year. So even if we don't think the post office is leaving, if we rezone it,
It might.
then it gives us, but it gives us, I mean, there's a whole, that's a whole nother conversation. Hold on.
Less and less
Yeah. Or how big it is. But in terms of if we rezone that to allow
Yeah.
with, because, is that, yeah, that's separate than the, on the substation, that doesn't get, that won't ever be.
No, but we talked about maybe if we just rezone it all and it's kind of consistent, equitable for everybody, let the chips fall and.
Gotcha, so we could
And
still
you kind
market
of
it.
know where things are gonna happen, but yeah.
For me, I think we've put that the long way through, the minimum number, we said, and do the math. What would it take to get to 2617? And the answer was, if you crammed it in, 5 to 7 stories tall, you could get it in on 60%. But none of us really wanna see great big
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
No.
And the pictures
Chunk,
and the
yeah.
pictures that Mark showed us had a lot of open space. They had
Yeah.
an old YMCA, so
Yeah.
2 stories tall, or a plaza or whatever.
Right.
You're gonna preclude that opportunity if you say it's, you know, from a reasonable standpoint, somebody at Commerce could say, you know, your plan's unbelievable, because that's not gonna happen. It's not gonna be all this way and no open space, because we love open space. One place to gather,
Yeah.
build community. So the 100% says it gives the developers through planning things or through development agreements, you can say you need to have this open space. Any place-
Yeah, more flexibility and leeway, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I was just gonna point out that the city does own, don't you
Well,
own this
we own
property
two
that you're
parts of
on?
Brandon
Yeah,
Oaks.
so you do have some stake in this, yeah.
I think the other way to put that, Mike, is we could plan for 60% and meet our obligation under the Growth Management Act, but I don't think we'd achieve the vision that I think we're all sitting here talking about around the room.
Yeah.
And the other thing that occurred to me is, I think we need to look at it from Mark's perspective as the developer. Smaller parcels are gonna get redeveloped when they're aggregated with the larger parcels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you don't allow those smaller parcels or an area that has smaller parcels to be part of it, it makes it harder for a developer to put together something that makes financial. So I think that's why I thought Sean put it really well, is planning commission, plan for 100% with these parameters that we want you to include, how we can keep that control. Good way to state it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of flexibility there, you know, in the implementation, as Clay said, this is more about the vision, and I think it seems clear from an external perspective anyway, hearing all you guys talk about this and being part of this process for the past, 6 months, that there is a desire for, and an idea for this square that we have on the map to be something, to be a cohesive thing in the long term, like downtown.
Well, I think, speak for everyone, but I do think everybody in the room really. So there is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that. Really like the guy was presenting of how he had the different segments further in, further out.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
sort of nice, yeah, it's a really eclectic version of trying to seeing that kind of oversized look, which is everybody.
Doesn't go with the feel of the city.
Doesn't, it's just counterintuitive.
But Clay could probably speak to this, there's ways to do that through the development regulations. I mean, we did this with EGA, we required that with the zoning, they had to come to the city with a master plan to be approved by the city council through the development agreement. So again, I think that's thinking steps ahead to the development regulations of how you'd implement it. So you could say, we want the whole area rezoned to allow this, but part of the development regulations might be that you've got to come forward with a development agreement be approved by the council, so we can keep that kind of control.
You could, if you were looking at 100% there, you could set policies that set the direction for how you're gonna evaluate the zoning and development. we want to see this type of open space. We want to see housing in these areas. We want to have a mix of heights and you, so you can set that framework that says, when we do the development regulations, we've got this groundwork. And I thought one of the good points was, you know, if you're using the 60%, you're saying we're gonna have pretty dense housing in that constricted area to try to meet that target, instead of, if you look at it as a whole, then you can look at providing those nodes and where do you want to have community space. You can look at how much it's going to cost to develop all the infrastructure and who's going to build the infrastructure and who's going to help pay for it, and all the things that make sense. So, you know, you're not going to do one piece and then think about what's the next phase when you come in 1 year. So, but this really is, the policy is just going to set those, it's going to cast the vision. Then the work starts of like, what's the best way to do it? How do you do the zoning and stuff? So it's your zoning regulations. I think they were talking about in Bothell, there's 3 different. Have the same thing. I think one of the things, maybe you do, but maybe you don't want, is in 20 years to have the same community business. A lot of redevelopment take place. If you've taken a look at that zone and the uses that are allowed, for the most part, those aren't the uses and that you're going to want to see grow. So I mean, also think about, you're talking about control. Think about what the zoning is right now and what it's saying and your vision is for the future of these areas. And I think, from what I'm hearing, you may want a different vision, and that can be executed through policy.
And when you look at that status quo, no action scenario that we studied, you know, that was based on the King County buildable lands, and that was based on current zoning, and, you know, and the reason why there wasn't showing much redevelopment or hardly any redevelopment in the sub-area is exactly what Clay said, because what's there now is not what, you know, when you look at a high level, where it's likely to redevelop, what's on the ground is not flexible enough to allow, really, but that county would expect things to occur, you know.
When I made the comment I did about that initial area, I think that we were off anywhere here about our fine vision for what we saw in the sub area, that it could be done, that let's just say that was like town center, bunch of trees.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a very clear discussion and a different approach. I think that the challenge was, how do we get past the landlords and the issues? These are buildings that are currently owned and leased and by different people, and so I wasn't worried about how we're going to get, you know, what kind of a design are we going to have. I was worried about how we're going to get past all these landlords, and so I think our decision today has got to be, planning commission, we're not supposed to be getting all wrapped up in that. We're supposed to be getting wrapped up in, do we agree on the vision for, you know, so.
And the free market will.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad saying, we're not gonna worry about that, because I do think that's a big issue. I wish there was but that's why I was getting wrapped up around that. How do we get past that? But that's not really our goal for today. That's not really our mission for today. If we wanna just think big, like John was saying, that's what we wanna do. Let's just say there's trees out there right now, and we wanna develop them into this vision to carry through to town center. Yeah, I think we all agree on that. We all see the vision. That would be wonderful. Get past this kind of not so lovely looking town sub area look and bring it into a town center look. Yeah, we like that. Just don't know how we're gonna do that and get to the housing that we need by the time we need it.
I liken it to our discussion on DRCC, where we've talked about, let's not talk about the dollars, because if we start talking about the dollars, we're not gonna get there. Let's dream about the vision, which is what we're here to do for the comp plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we come at the vision, figure out how we make it happen through the development regulations and other incentives that we.
I'm just wrapped up around how we're gonna get it done as opposed to what's, that's me, yeah, that's what I'm gonna. So I kind of say that for everybody, myself included, is that we just need to be focused. What's it look like? Do we agree with that? I agree with that. Do we have a consensus?
Well, we need to wait for this.
Vote now, quick.
Yeah.
Actually, I got Vince, I think Vince is in agreement too.
Yeah.
While we wait for Vince, any other?
Let's pretend like we're done when he comes back.
I just want to say that this has been a really good discussion, like, there's a path forward, no matter what we choose, and being more comfortable about getting behind it.
I think it was also very helpful for me when we think about if we're doing it in a smaller area, and I think maybe that's why the first sub-area plan wasn't, it's because we were just only doing a certain area, so that's why it had to hit those high numbers versus, you know, I could, yeah, like I can see in the Mill Creek Plaza, that would be where like the taller buildings would be versus, you know, along the pathways where it was so jarring to see such higher numbers next to that kind of, like, where would people park? How do we get to, you know, that discussion? So just acknowledging that it has to be all of it, you know, or at least for the number for the report.
Yeah, but I think that you know, the idea of 60 and 40, I think we framed it that way because of the scenario that was set up, to your point, Mayor Pro Tem, and I think also, you know, you could reverse that numerical logic, right? Just like change the denominator. So instead of 60 or 40, you could say, okay, well, one density or another density or a mix of densities.
Yeah.
It's essentially saying the same thing. It's the same X density on X acres, or, you know, X acres accommodating which density level. So yeah, it essentially gives you much more flexibility, like you said.
Unless my vibe skills are way off, I think we can. That's just.
We said that, but then you were in here, so Vince isn't here, so we can't do
So it's
consensus
actually
until he
still
gets
away.
back.
I tried to vote while you weren't here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well, it sounds like option two would plan for 100% rezoning, 100% with, but you've heard the comments.
With Clay White's criteria.
Policies to.
Yep, Sai's gonna be there to guide us, yeah.
Walkability and.
Yeah. We've taken lots of notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the planning commission member, thank you for giving us some guidance. So we aren't headed over here and then in July, we find out you guys are over.
That's why.
Yeah.
That could still happen.
Yeah.
Hold my water.
We got a year and a half till next election.
We need to, yeah, so I'd ask for a motion to adjourn our planning commission meeting. In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Very much appreciate it.
Get to chat more as a proximate.
Is that what that looks like?
Yep, they're open. Just
I'm gonna have to go look at that. Maybe our graphic artist was inspired by it.
It doesn't have Vignal building.
Yeah.
It looks like.
Maggie Nolan, yeah, they went all the way through. Yeah.
All right, well, we have to get oh my God.
You can't get rid of me. No. He's coming back, y'all.
Okay, we still have a little more business to do, everyone. We still have a little more business. We're not done quite yet. Don't make me use the gavel again for the second time tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Good idea. I know those coming back. He's trying to be here. Chairs we had up here.
I could live in this chair.
Okay, are we ready to keep going?
Yes. Boo.
Okay, we
just
do
getting
not
warmed up.
have a, don't make me do it. Okay, we do not have a consent agenda tonight, so that brings us to reports. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one report. Proud to announce that we did select Ella Williams as the student, senior at Jackson High School, as the candidate to move forward for Mill Creek selection into the CQC contest, scholarship contest. So next week, I'll have a chance to meet with Ella on Monday in person. Just something that I've done with the last candidate last year, just try to get them a little bit educated on city, local government work. And I think this is a good opportunity to get these kids kind of get their feet wet a little bit in terms of kind of what we do. And as you've seen last year, with the other qualified candidate, you can kind of see kind of down the road, the kind of people that we may want working for, local government down the future. Another great candidate, Ella's going to come back on next Tuesday. She'll present in front of us to give her background, what she's done as a student, and close to home, she is a Mill Creek on the Mill Creek Youth Advisory Board. I think she's gone up to the level of co-president. So that's just a tip of the iceberg, and so we'll welcome her next Tuesday. So thanks. And then I'll pass it on to
Jody or Scott or both?
Scott, the marketing and communications to present on our events and sponsorship update.
Evening, council, mayor pro tem. Two strategies here. Either you guys are just excited to hear something new.
Yeah.
Or fly through this quick. Maybe I'll go somewhere in the middle. I'm just gonna do a quick presentation here about our sponsorships program, which started back in 2007. Back in 2007, they got 23 businesses. And ever since then, it was a really good program. And in 2021, when Jody and I came on, there were no sponsorships. That program didn't exist. And we didn't do it in 2022 either. So last year was our first year of really pushing through it, trying to raise some money in in-kind donations. And then, Shaylin, you can go to the next slide, please. So, and we needed these programs because they help us provide the free community building events, which we all know kind of is what Mill Creek is known for. So, and when we say, it supports it, we've been doing a lot of promotion of this on social, but, it helps us with the marketing, helps us with the entertainment, the giveaways, the cupcakes, right? They're back on board again, event supplies, and many other things. That's very costly to run these great events. So then the next slide, this is just a quick glimpse. Jody's going to go in depth here in a little bit, or not really in depth, just a little bit. But it's our standard event list for the year. There's a few tweaks here and there, a little different, but these are basically the opportunities that we give to our sponsors when they sign up. So on the next slide, we did some changes this year to the different levels. We introduced the signature sponsor, which was the $10,000 level, and there's one available, 2 golds, 4 silvers, and a bronze, which is also new. So last year we had an a la carte to do one event or something like that, and we wanted to give those folks an opportunity to do a couple events and also be recognized throughout the year. So that's why we created that. You might ask, why only 2 golds, 4 silvers, and why is it like that? Well, because if you look here in the middle, it talks about the sponsorship placard on the Freedom Field scoreboard. We only have a certain amount of spaces. Maybe we need to make it bigger. I don't know. Then we can have more. So these are all just kind of the ways that people can get involved. And there's, it's either from doing advertisements, how we can help them on social, at different events, anything like that. So on the next slide, it'll show you we sold them all. And yeah, nice. And what's not noted on here is we actually sold 3 of the bronzes. That happened. Our deadline was January 31st, and we got a few stragglers in. So we did not want to say no to them. So on the next slide, so the different types of outreach and marketing, what we did this year was we reached out to about 150 different businesses and organizations. We were 3 months ahead of last year. So we did this all in December. So we were pretty excited about that, and worked with the Mill Creek Chamber as well to recruit as many as we could. Then on the next slide is our sponsors. So JL Remodeling. They are our signature sponsor this year. They're out of Linwood. The owner lives in Mill Creek. They've been pretty involved in the community for a number of years. But if you go to the next slide, Shaylin, look at the amount of returning sponsors. So that just kind of told us we're doing something right, and these people still want to give us their money. So that's pretty fantastic, we thought. The next slide, we just talk about how we're helping these folks promote them as we promised we were going to. I don't know who's on social, but who's seen these. We kind of been putting this out there, letting the community know who our sponsors are, right? That's something we hadn't done before. So now when they're at our events, they have a little bit more information about who they are, what they are. You know, Community Transit is a gold sponsor. They were like, it's obvious. It's the Orange Line's launching soon. They really wanted to partner with us. So that's what they're going to be doing at our events this year for sure. And then the next slide, that's just pretty much the end. It's just, you know, we've been ramping up a lot since COVID, really learning and improving our events, and now having more sponsors and more money to do better things. We're just able to provide better quality events with excellent sponsors. Any questions?
Great job. Great job.
Councilmember Allison had her light on first.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, so Community Transit, they use their marketing dollars to sponsor. I'm just, you know, they're a tax funded entity.
Yeah,
It
last
doesn't
year,
feel quite right.
last year they used their outreach money. This year they're using their marketing money.
Thank you
I
for that.
can't actually, don't.
You,
quote
you
me,
don't know that
but
for
that's-
sure. Okay.
We're working with
but-
the marketing department this year.
Yeah.
And last year was the outreach.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Duque?
Thank you so much. I still can't believe all the work and everything that you guys do together to make all this happen. It feels like you should have a team of 5 people. So it's amazing to be able to get these sponsorships. At the Mill Creek Chamber meeting today that we had, our board meeting, I talked about how I've been seeing the sponsorships that the city has been posting. So it's been really great to be able to see that. So thank you for all your incredible hard work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott did an amazing job with the sponsorships. He did most of that job, especially, and he came up with the idea for really highlighting them on social media. And it was just a great idea, and he's followed through with that really well. All right, thanks, Shaylin. All right, we're going to talk about events. Most of our events are events that you guys have seen all last year, so we are not going to go into them in minute detail. We do have a couple of changes. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So one of the things that we concentrated on this year was trying to figure out better ways to get the word out about all of our events in different ways. So getting them all nailed down in advance and early in the year was really important. So we did that. There are a couple new ones on here that you probably haven't seen before, or at least not in our time. And one of those is first on the list, the Neighborhood Disaster Preparedness Program. The chief and
No, it's not.
Chaplain Nick Lewis came up with, I believe this has happened in the past, but just hasn't happened since pre-COVID. But they put this together. These are all scheduled. I believe we have 4 of them scheduled for the year. We are getting great response on this actually on social media. People are interested in this kind of preparedness training. So those programs are starting up, and more information, you can find more information on our website. This whole packet will come out. Adrian will make sure that you guys get this packet tomorrow. We're doing Coffee with a Cop at Frost Donuts this time out, so we're excited about that. Let's see. Earth Day cleanup on the North Creek Trail will happen again. Dog Walker Watch, Barb's in charge of that, and we're trying to focus on bringing a comprehensive list of all of the Mill Creek events out. The Kiwanis Electronics Recycling events coming back. The one big change on this list is that Party in the Parks, the Party in the Parks on August 6th and National Night is a combined event with National Night Out. So in the past, we started out doing 3 party in the parks and National Night Out. Last year, we did 2 party in the parks and National Night Out. We just realized that with the Mill Creek Festival and everything else that we're doing, we were just like pretty much dead on our feet by the time we got through summer. And we still had a whole long way to go through events with our Veterans Day and stuff. It just wasn't really possible with the team, the size that we had. So we talked to the PD and we're excited to partner with them on this and kind of do a mashup of bringing our sponsorships together with all of theirs. And so we'll just make sure that'll be just a big, lovely event. So we're excited about that. Oh, and then also the Party in the Parks and Kids Fun Run. The Kids Fun Run portion is new there. So we're gonna do a Kids Fun Run on the infield. And so most of the booths will be outside of that space. And then we are not gonna do the board bash this year. We had just a couple years of the board bash and it was really just a conflict with the folks that were coming. It just wasn't a good fit. Not that we will never do board bash again, but just not in conjunction with a party in the parks. So it might be like some sort of separate event that when we're a larger team that we could bring back, because we really did love that. It just didn't fit. It wasn't a good fit with families. So
I like doing a fun run for the kids.
yeah, we're
I
excited.
mean, that sounds really fun.
Yeah, we're really excited about that. And our sponsors are excited about it too. So we're happy to bring that. Next page. So this is, I think everything else on here we're doing trunk or treat on Main again, on Main Street, Veterans Day. We already got started. One of the other things that like Scott mentioned that we're talking about is we're moving up our timeline on planning all of this. And so that helps us. We're gonna start sooner with our Veterans Committee. We already had a meeting with them. We already have plans for when our first communications are gonna go out. Those are gonna go out in May this year. Because what we realized is that it takes a lot of planning to bring that many groups together. And if you want to make it better and have more vehicles and you're dealing with the military, you have to plan those so early. So we're bumping that up and starting invitations, kind of save the date style invitations in May. And next slide. So the ways that we advertise or get the word out to the community, of course, online our events. We already have all of our events for the year listed on our website. So that's a big step ahead from where we have been. So we're excited to have that. On our social media, all of the events are on Facebook events scheduled, thanks to Scott. Also, we use Instagram and Nextdoor. And you can see that we've asked, please remember to follow, like, and share. So a big part of our community events is getting the word out there. And if you guys see an event that you're interested in, that you want to participate in, we would love it if you would share that with your community or with the folks that you know to help spread that word a little bit farther. We do as much of that as we can. And we ask, of course, our friends and stuff to do that. But when it's coming from city council and our leadership, that really matters. So we appreciate it if you guys could all help us get the word out. Next slide. Something new that we're doing is we've purchased digital displays for City Hall South and City Hall North. I don't know if you knew or noticed, but during the windstorms this year, our passport kiosk kind of died. It got tossed around and torn apart. And that was really, when we came on board, that wasn't there. And that was something we were really excited about, was bringing the ability for the community to come and get their passport needs met, outside at that kiosk, get questions answered. That was a big step for us. This is the next step in that. We're gonna have a big display in that front window. So that kiosk will go away. The words on the window will go away. And you'll see a big screen there. And not only will it rotate all of the passport information, we are hoping to integrate other languages in that information, but also all of our Mill Creek events and other flyers, things like that need to go up will all be digital. We'll be using a program called Digital Display, and that is all, we can do that all from our desk or home, wherever you are. I actually use this for another source and it's amazing. Super easy to use. So we're excited. We're gonna have, templates that we're gonna make, to make this easier. Next slide, please. So that when we do create a flyer or something like that, we can use that once. We're gonna use that as a photo, as an image on our events. We'll be able to use that on social. So we're looking at ways to, like it says, work smarter, not harder. Did you add the harder part, Scott? I'm pretty sure. I think you did. No, I'm joking. Anyhow, so we're looking at ways to have efficiencies and where we can not, double up on our work, and this is one of those ways. So we're excited to bring that on board. We should have those all installed by the end of the month. So you'll start seeing those around. We'll have one at the entrance. We've kept the main screen. We're installing the Fire TV on that large screen that's already in the lobby. We'll utilize that. That's the only one that's gonna be the landscape format. And then we'll have one in the lobby at City Hall North when you come in that can be seen from outside. So if there's something that the building's closed, they'll be able to look in and actually see that screen that says it's closed if it's snow or whatever. And then if you go all the way to the back of City Hall North where the large and small community rooms are, there's a area in the middle where the families wait for their kids when they're in classes, and we're gonna have it there. So it's really an opportunity to get our story to the community in a more efficient way. So we're excited about that.
Will this be on the website too?
What's on this screen?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay.
Maybe. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that. And I think that's it. Is there another screen? Oh, this shows all the rest. So the ones that we've built out. So that's the other cool thing is so that we can go into this program, which I already started, and you can create these in Canva and then just upload them, and it takes 30 seconds. It's that quick. So you can have a message out on all throughout the city or all throughout our buildings at the same time. It's really a cool program and not expensive. That's the other thing. It's actually less expensive to do digital signage these days, especially with the cost. The screens are literally just Fire TVs. That's all it is. They don't need anything but a plug and a Wi-Fi setting. So we're excited. I think that's it. One more slide is thank you. And
I have
any
one question.
questions? You bet.
What is a dog walker watch?
Do you want to answer that, Barb, since you're here?
It's a police program, part of National Night Out, National Association of Town Watch. And it's a way to get the community, while they're walking their dog, to also be aware of their surroundings. If they see anything that is not safe, not okay, see some activity that is not good, to call the police department, call 911. So it's sort of training them that you're out there anyway. So with your dog, so let's help make our community safer.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Duguay?
I have 4 questions. The Veterans Day event, I know last year there was conflict with another parade going on or another activity that was happening. Do we see that happening this time around, or is that why we're trying to get earlier? That we ended up moving it from the 11th to the 10th?
We did that because, because Auburn does their big parade on Saturday, and it's always on a Saturday before or after. So we typically have ours on the actual day, but it was gonna be a conflict for that reason. So it had something to do with that. It's really difficult to get those military vehicles when we're trying to coordinate them at the same time.
No, that makes sense. That's why I was curious if this was gonna be an ongoing issue, but you're saying they're Saturday no matter what.
Yeah, they're always Saturday. So
Okay.
whenever Saturday will be a problem, then that'll be a decision we'll have to make.
Yeah.
But
I'm very excited for the digital versions and just as a random, when you were talking about the places that you guys promote, social media, whatnot, for the school district using Peach Jar.
we did make that note because you brought that up before. That was a great idea. There are times when And that's another thing that we need to talk about as far as like budget for advertising. Typically, that's not something that we have done.
Mhm.
Peach Jar actually does charge depending on the event,
Mhm.
but every time we've tried to put something through, it's been a charge event, so we haven't done it, but I guess we have to look at that.
Yeah, and it could be something of connecting with the PTAs for their newsletter instead of using, because the Peach Jar is through, I believe, the school district versus some PTAs have their own newsletters that they send out.
That's a great idea.
So it
Yeah.
could just be connecting directly that way, and seeing if there's an opportunity. The other thing is, it's more of a reminder for all of us council members and anyone in attendance. Please, RSVP going or interested for any of the Facebook, events that staff put together, because it helps improve their algorithms. So the more times you say interested or you just RSVP that you're going, whether or not you're going, you're still thinking about it, it then shares it with your, with anyone that you see your post. So please, as a task for all of us to do it. And then I would love to see on these events, I know it's not as fun, but I'd love to see city council, like our actual Tuesday meetings, listed on your digital displays. Because I saw like city chat, but I didn't see, because members are invited to come. I know it's not like a city event, like there's not always bun cakes in the lobby for those who weren't here in attendance. But
We do have
just,
them on Facebook, so the
Yes.
the meetings are always on Facebook, but that's a great idea.
even
We'll
if it's just,
add that.
even if you don't want to include it in your very cool May, that nice displayed one, even if it's just city council meeting Tuesdays, just something that just flashes through, I think,
It's a good idea.
anytime we can help, improve civic engagement. And that's it. Thank you for everything you do.
Absolutely, thank you.
Great report. Thank you.
Final report for staff is Chief's gonna report on, his staffing report.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor Pro Tem Council, and just real quickly, I'd like to also thank Jody and Scott for all the hard work they did. Unbeknownst to many, that they are also really involved with our media relations with the local media in the area. When we have our major events, they definitely work with our department, and I appreciate all the hard work that they do for us. They do get some strange phone calls on weekends and late nights, so thank you. Quick report on staffing for us. The 2023 was kind of a ebb and flow year for us, as far as staffing is concerned. We had thought that we had gotten to a point where we were gonna be up to full staffing. We actually had some people resign towards the end of the year, and we ended the year with 5 vacancies in the police department. Happy to report that last month we brought on 2 new entry-level officers. They've started with our department last month. And yesterday we brought on a 3rd entry-level officer, so we now have 2 vacancies. Of those vacancies, though, we do have 3 candidates that are in the testing process right now. So we're very hopeful that by the end of, we're hoping that by maybe the end of March, we might have those vacancies filled. So that's optimistic, but that's what we're hoping for. And on the civilian side of the police department, we did bring in a lateral candidate from a previous employment with a law enforcement agency up north. That candidate is working out perfectly. She's excelling in her training, so we're actually starting to bring her into the property room and doing some work with her there. So we're very optimistic about it. And we do have a person that is in the process for the final position on our civilian side. And so we're hoping that background comes through soon and we can bring her on board as well. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thanks for the update. Thank you.
No other reports, Mayor.
Okay, I only had a couple items, but in the interest of time, I'll defer them to next week, so I don't have to breeze through them too quickly. So, Mayor Pro Tem, any report tonight?
I actually do have a few items, sorry, it's late.
Quick,
First off, I just want to let everyone know that the legislative committee has, and first and forefront, to let you know that we have been working on a letter to send to our representatives regarding House Bill 2160, to kind of, lay out for them our concerns regarding that bill. And so I just want to let all of you know that we were doing that and that will be, sent over. And I also want you, we are watching, and going to, respond in some way to House Bill 2113. And so I just want to flag both of those for you guys. And House Bill 2113 requires, I think it's the Commerce Department to look over all our plans and approve them and get way in the weeds on what we're doing with our comp plans. And
The housing element.
had the housing element. Thank you. And so I just wanted to flag for both of you that we are, or for all of you, that we are watching both of those. And so that you are aware of that. And all of you can sign up for AWC's hot sheet if you have not already. And they email that out every Monday and tell you what's going on that they're watching and where they stand on things. And that's where I participate in their meetings and I use that hot sheet and it gives me a lot of information. So everybody I encourage everybody to be signing up for that and get that information. Second, I just want to let everyone know, we have resumed having our mayor pro tem, or council president meeting that we used to have once a month. And today we had a really interesting question regarding the lobbyists. And so, I know we have put that on hold until next year, but, some really interesting conversations that we had in considering the work that we're doing right now on, letters, and just keeping up with all of the changes that happen. We really had a good conversation on how lobbyists can help you stay on top of all the changes and everything going on in Olympia, because it happens so fast and how it's just impossible. There's so many changes for a council member to stay on top of every single thing that's happening. And I think we, as a council in the past, have been thinking about lobbyists just in line with looking for getting us more money for things. But I just want to start to plant this seed that as we start to have this conversation at budget time again, that we also consider that a lobbyist could be very beneficial in being the one to keep on top of all of these things, how things change so fast in the middle of the night, and helping write these letters to lobby on our behalf and things like that, that take a lot of time. So just wanted to throw that out there for you guys since we had that chat today. And that's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Cavallari,
No report, Mayor.
Councilmember Steckler,
No report, Mayor.
Councilmember Allison,
No comment.
Councilmember Duque.
A couple of things. Councilmember Allison and I will be heading to Olympia tomorrow. We're on the legislative committee and we're going for AWC with the city manager and with the deputy city manager. We are going separately, but we will be down there for Wednesday and Thursday. And so we'll probably split some type of report back for you guys when we get back to figure it out. The other thing, I mentioned earlier that I went to a chamber board meeting. And so just a reminder, tomorrow there's an Engage Mill Creek event at 4:30. And I just blanked on the location and I had it open. So I will look at it again in a second. Oh, it's at a 4-Stitch Brewing. That's why I knew I blanked out on it. I had it in my head. So please, if you guys can attend, I am fortunately 4-Stitch Brewing behind the QFC. Fantastic location, great business. They're super welcoming and kind. So I please encourage you, if you haven't been to an Engage event, it's a networking event, please do. You do not have to be a member. I won't be there in attendance. And I know Councilmember Paddock has attended in the past. So if you can, it would be great. Something else new that the chamber is doing is called Coffee Connections. So they're trying a different time of the day. And so that's going to be February 13th is the next one. It's at 8 a.m. Unfortunately, again, those are not ones that I can make because I have small children who get on a bus, but it's 8 to 9:30 a.m. and on February 13th, and it's going to be at Expedia Cruises in Town Center. And so those are just a couple of locations that you guys are interested in. And then tomorrow I'll be attending virtually the Parks and Recreation Board meeting, which I just realized I hadn't flagged since I'll be in Olympia. So I will follow up on how to get into that. So thank you, everyone.
Councilmember Paddock.
Seeing the yawns in the audience, no report.
Anyone like to address the council? Seeing no affirmative responses, on behalf of the auditor, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:29 p.m.
You know, I wonder, will, like, just.
Hey, Jody.
Oh, whatever.
Jody.